Good morning. It is a pleasure to welcome all of you to our company. This is a special day. We will be speaking a lot about B3. We'll speak about novelties, what we're doing, what we have done so far. I think that today we are launching a new ticker for the company. I think that this is an important symbol for our company. We have a project of building a new company, a new brand. And this is a symbolic ticker that means a lot to the company in terms of how the company is known in the market, particularly in the equity market. And we are all very proud of having come this far and to be able to launch this new ticker on this B3 day. It's a great satisfaction for our team to be able to align everything we are doing under this new ticker. Today we're going to speak a lot about B3 and speak about why we're living a very special moment. Today, we are living a rare moment as a company. We believe that in addition to having a very good business and a very well-balanced portfolio of products and services, very well-balanced in terms of revenues, as we will see, both globally and in Brazil, we have a good scenario. Globally, we see the growth of several regions with no inflation. And our country is resuming a trajectory of growth, and it needs the capital market to grow. This will clearly be a way for us to grow, and all of this creates a very special moment for our company. Our company is getting prepared, as you will see along this presentation, not only because of the integration, combination, and the execution of the M&A that is quite advanced, but also in terms of project delivery this year. We didn't stop any of our projects. We'll speak about that. And we are having a new internal organization, touching all sensitive points, not leaving anything uncovered. We have a very strong team working with a new culture, and I'll speak about all of that in my presentation. So I think that these three things, our business, the moment that the country is living, and the global outlook, all of that combined creates a very special moment. Here with me, we have Rodrigo Nardoni, VP of IT, Daniela Sombra, CFO, IRO. I've eaten too much cheese buns. Cicero Vieira, our COO, Marcos Vanderlei, officer responsible for the financing unit, and Juca Andrade, our products and clients VP. We will each speak a little bit, and in the end, we'll open up for questions. We have, like I said, a very important infrastructure company that is very present and relevant for the financial market in Brazil. We're very integrated with the whole market. Financial institutions, banks, intermediaries, brokerage houses, buy side, sell side, and we are quite intertwined in this business, playing a very relevant and important role, always supporting operations, guaranteeing that the cycle will be respected, and somehow contributing so that our clients and intermediaries can make more business as the Brazilian market becomes more sophisticated. This is our role, to support the financial market. This is a relevant task for the company. Like I said, post-merger of CETIP, BMF and Bovespa integration, we have a very sophisticated business model. In the first 9 months until September 17, we see growth in all of our business segments. In the Bovespa segment, and in what we call UFIN, CETIP financing segment, we have solid two-digit growth. And these are the most pro-cyclical segments of our business. The other segments In others, we have
one-offs, tem uma reversão aí de
some
58
one-offs. We have a
milhões,
reversal of
que faz com
58
que esse número seja grande
million.
demais em outros,
And
mas tanto no segmento
both in
BMF
the
quanto no
BMF
segmento
segment and in the
UTVM,
UTVM,
a
also TIP
gente
securities
apresenta
segment,
crescimento,
we
mesmo em
see
negócios que tenham
growth.
ano talvez
Even
mais
in
adverso, seja
businesses
porque a
that
taxa de juros
face
está
a more
caindo, seja porque a gente
adverse
tenha menos
condition because
volatilidade
interest rates are
no câmbio
dropping
e a
or
gente tem
because we have
receios
less
atrelados a
volatility in
câmbio,
the exchange
como
rate.
vocês
We do
sabem, nesses
have
dois negócios. Mas a
exchange rate
combinação,
pegged
e até
revenues.
pela pizza a gente
But
pode
the
ver,
combination you
a
can see
combinação
in the
faz
pie
com que
chart.
a gente tenha
This
negócio muito sólido,
combination makes us
diversificado
have a very
e que é
solid,
grande
diversified
diferencial
business.
de
And
todas,
this is the biggest
de muitas
differential.
empresas, que a gente vai bem num momento que o país vai bem, e a gente
We
vai
do
bem
well
sempre.
when the
O
company,
país vai bem quando o país
when
não
the
vai bem.
country
Isso faz
does
da
well,
gente
but we
uma
do
empresa
well when
muito
the company
diferenciada.
is not doing that well. That makes us a very differentiated company.
Como eu falei, a conjuntura
Like I said,
de mercado era muito propícia para nós,
the
né?
market
Eu mencionei que a gente tem
conditions
país
are
em
very good
busca
for
do seu
us
mercado
now.
de capitais
The
para crescer.
country is relying
Eu
on
acho
its
que
capital
não
market
poderia
to grow.
deixar de mencionar
And we
como
have to mention
principal fator
as
que,
the
do que, na minha opinião,
main
vai impulsionar o mercado de
driver
capitais, que é
driving
a
the
queda da
capital
taxa de
market,
juros, né?
which
Essa queda
is
da taxa
a
de juros que a gente
reduced
viu, esse combate à
interest
inflação,
rates. We see
e
interest
essa,
rates
tipo assim,
dropping, inflation under control,
avanço de conseguir colocar a taxa de juros nominal
and now
no patamar
we
mais
have the
baixo
nominal
aí da
interest
série
rates
histórica,
at the lowest
definitivamente
level
impacta muito
ever,
o
and that
potencial
definitely
de
impacts
crescimento
and a
do
lot
mercado de
the growth
capitais.
potential
Eu acho
of
que
the
vai
capital
ser um dos maiores
market. And I think that
catalisadores
this is going to be one
do
of
que
the
a gente vai
biggest
vivenciar
catalysts
em
of what
2018
we
e
are going to be seeing in
2019, né?
2018
Ele
and
exige que o
19.
investidor
Demand requires that
tenha
investors
uma atitude diferente, né? O
have
investidor
a
ele é
different
forçado de
attitude.
alguma forma
Investors
pela
will be
rentabilidade mais
somehow
baixa
forced
a
by
migrar
lower
do seu investimento, que é
profitability
muito
to
concentrado
migrate
no
from
Brasil em renda
investments
fixa,
concentrated in
né?
fixed
Mais de
income in Brazil.
90%
Today,
do
more than
AUM está em
90%
fundos de
of
investimentos de renda
assets
fixa,
under
ou seja, isso
management are
cresceu.
in
A
fixed
parcela em
income
ações a gente
funds.
vai ver um
This
pouquinho mais para
has
frente,
grown.
vem caindo nos últimos
Equities
10, 15 anos.
have been dropping in the last 10, 15 years in terms of allocation. And undoubtedly, investors will be more sophisticated, will look for loans, multi-market funds, real estate products. They will foster more products that we already see in our agenda. We also have a brand
importante de que não há mais aquele sonho de que o
today it's
Estado
important to say
será a
there's no,
solução
the dream does
para os
not
problemas do
continue,
país.
the
Então, a gente
dream
tem
that the
a redução
government
do
will be the
papel,
solution
dos
for
bancos
all of the
públicos,
problems in the country. We see a
principalmente do
reduction
na
in
agenda
the
do
role
mercado de
of
capitais,
state-owned
de
banks,
alguma
particularly
forma, menciono
BNDES,
isso sempre,
in terms
o
of
CFO
driving
que
the
não
capital
fosse lá no
market. I
BNDES,
always mentioned
como
the
primeira fonte de
CFO who didn't go
recursos
to
era
BNDES
incompetente,
as
né?
the
Isso é
first source
sabido,
of
até
funds
porque
was considered
indo lá
incompetent.
ele
That
conseguia
was
quase
known because
100%
by
do
going
seu
there,
funding para
CFOs
conseguir
would
fazer
get
seus
almost
projetos.
100%
Então,
of
não havia
funding
como
for their
ter
projects.
incentivo ao mercado de capitais.
There was no
Com esse
incentive to the
cenário. Isso
capital market
impacta
when you have this kind of scenario.
bastante tanto para o negócio de equities
And that
quanto
impacts
pro
both the
negócio de
equities
securities.
business
A
and the
gente também
securities
está
business.
atualmente vivendo
We are
o fim
currently
da maior recessão que o
experiencing
país
the
já
end
passou,
of the
né?
worst
Então,
recession
sinais claros aí
ever
depois de
in
3
Brazil.
trimestres, 4
After
trimestres,
3-4
com
quarters
melhora do PIB, com
with
sinais
a
de
GDP
crescimento.
improvement
Isso
and
é muito
signs of
bom
improvement,
para a expansão do
we
crédito,
see
e aí a expansão do
a
crédito
good, positive
impacta nossos
outlook for
negócios,
expanding loans.
tanto de
Expanding loans will impact our
UTVM,
business
seja por captação de bancos,
in
mais
terms of
captação
banks
bancária,
funding,
mais
more
fomento de
banks
ativos, né?
providing
Mais negócios
funding,
com derivativos
more
de juros,
assets, more business with
mais
interest
negócios de
derivatives,
financiamentos
more
automóveis, enfim, os
auto
bancos
loans,
voltando
and so
a
on and
uma
so forth. In
agenda
other words,
de
banks
crescimento real
again
dos seus ativos,
adopting
né?
an
Há alguns
agenda
anos a gente já vê que a
of
agenda dos
real
bancos
growth
passa
for
por
their assets. For some
crescimento
years, we've seen the
nominal
agenda
menor,
of
né, do
banks
que o crescimento
with
real,
a lower nominal growth
crescimento nominal menor do que inflação,
than
isso faz com
the
que, na verdade, os
inflation.
portfólios estejam
And
diminuindo
that
e acho que a gente
makes
começa
the
a ver
portfolios shrink.
uma
But now
retomada
we start seeing a
dos bancos,
resumption
seja em ativos, seja em
of
captação.
banks
Pra
in
gente,
terms of
nossos
assets and
negócios
funding.
é
And to
fundamental.
us and for our businesses, this is
Por
fundamental.
fim, eu acho que a gente tem
Finally,
mais empresas
I think
dispostas
that there are
a
more
emitir
companies
dívida,
now
emitir
willing to
ações, né,
issue
tomar
debt,
a
stock,
agenda
to resume the agenda of stock issuance. And I think that today, as I mentioned, not only do we have a low allocation of investments in the buy side and the asset management industries, but also in terms of global indicators. Our participation in MSCI used to be 18%, now it's down to 7%. Whilst we have investors who are very interested in valuations in Brazil, given what has happened in the last 3 to 5 years, when valuation of equities globally in multiples grew in a scary way. In Brazil, multiples dropped and the bottom line dropped. So we have this combination of potential growth of delivery by companies, by multiples. And that makes Brazil always enjoy special attention of international managers. All of that all together, in our view, will lead to increased sophistication in our market. We always say that Brazil is a country with a developed financial market, and it is true. However, I think that it is a lot less sophisticated than the market could be. This combination of reducing interest rates, this is a historical combination of high interest rates, high inflation rates, and a great focus on fixed income. That has always inhibited the product agenda. We did not, or we could not progress in the loans agenda, in options and others. But now we're living a different combination. It's quite powerful, and it will drive more sophistication in our market. And it will stimulate a number of industries, multi-market funds, for example, that are already raising a lot of funds, or individual investors looking for alternative investment options and more sophisticated financial products. Speaking more specifically about our company now, I believe that among our priorities, we have to have a fantastic team. Our leaders have played a fundamental role in this moment that the company is experiencing through our partnership spirit and the will to write history. And I feel that our team, my direct reports and officers, superintendents, and managers who are here, they are devoted full time to the project of making this a new company. And why not the best company in the country, which is the challenge I had put forth to my team. These are my direct reports. And I make a point of mentioning them because I think that we have a very talented team with diverse and vast market experience and knowledge in terms of risk management. These people have worked for local banks, foreign banks, they worked for a stock exchange, in wholesale and retail and consulting firms. So that makes us have a great team that will undoubtedly make a difference in terms of our deliverables in the coming years. I'll start with Juca. Juca will speak a little bit about his area and priorities. He works with clients and products. He's going to talk about that, the restructuring of our product area, fees, marketing, new businesses, and development of Latin American markets. Cícero Vieira joined the CETIP operations, maintained all of the operations, which are the core of the company under him, with trading, post-trading, risk, regulation of issuers, depository, and bank. Marcos Vanderlei, he joined the team, replacing Roberto, who left the company. I think Marcos was an excellent acquisition, given his vast knowledge in terms of the business, his business knowledge. He has the financing business area, he's handling innovations, data, and we are going to be talking about the mature the mature businesses that we have in our agenda with the real estate market. Rodrigo Nardoni joined under him IT, technology, trading systems, post-trading systems, the whole infrastructure. He's going to talk a little about that. IT security, cyber security, he's going to speak a little about that. And the technology area is always under him. Daniel Saunders, the CFO, he continues handling finance, investor relations, administrative, legal, and in record time, we were able to deliver a good deal of the infrastructure of corporate areas under Daniel Saunders. Daniel has been a great partner in tracking the IMO, the administrative office, and we'll speak about how we devoted ourselves to that. On our left, we have Anna Bockheim in human resources with a huge agenda of things to do. She's our female leader together with Sonia Favoreto, driving us to advance in terms of the culture of our company in human resources, talents. Eduardo Farias, in addition to internal controls, compliance, and risk, he is responsible for the IMO, the integration office. He is now becoming the leader of PMO. I will explain later the importance of PMO. Sonia, I mentioned, she's in charge of communication, press. She has a big sustainability agenda and a number of challenges in terms of social investment. We have been investing a lot to try to figure out what we need to do and how to do it. We have a lot in that agenda. And Gustavo Batista, I hope our audit committee will see this little one. He reports to the audit committee, not to me. But he has a very big agenda so that businesses will flow in compliance with what the company aims to do after the merger. It's not here, but we have also Marcos Stoll, who is responsible for BSM. I think it is important to mention, in all M&A, it is normal to have people leaving. In an M&A like ours, where a number of people had lived their whole professional lives in a company after 20 years or so working for the same company, they kind of rethink whether they want to continue after the merger. We treated everyone with a lot of respect. People who decided to stay and people who decided to leave. I don't think that we had anything different than what we expected in a normal M&A cycle. If we go through a merger, we cannot have the illusion that we're going to have a place for everyone and that people will keep the jobs that they would like to keep. But I'm happy to see that those who stayed and who are with us are rowing the boat in the same direction, and they're very, very committed and dedicated. And that will make a big difference in the coming years. I am very sure and happy with a number of demonstrations of how our leading team is united for the benefit of the company. I could speak here for about an hour about people, but I only have 20 seconds left and a number of slides to cover. Well, the year has gone by very fast. Our feeling is that we've been working for 2 to 3 years in the company. So much we have achieved in only 8 months. We should begin talking about execution of our projects that were already in the agenda of both companies, and we didn't stop any of the projects. We didn't neglect any of the commitments with the regulators. We tried to address everything. I think our projects along the year were delivered. This was not an easy year. We had very complex and risky projects to deliver, but we did deliver them. Parallel to that, we focused on the integration of both companies. We worked on a number of projects related to the integration that are halfway done. Perhaps we had a cycle of 18 months set forth in the beginning of the operation, but we executed the plan to integrate both companies with a lot of dedication and focus. We revisited processes and internal structures to gain more agility. The highlight here is that we were not afraid of facing difficult situations. I look back at everything we've done, and we did not sweep anything under the rug. We put everything on the table. Oh, we have to integrate IT. IT is separated. Let's do it. Let's look at the clusters of fixed income and equity. Let's do SAP. Let's integrate HR. Let's deliver the policies. There was nothing that has been neglected. And I think that this shows the maturity with which we behaved during the integration. We didn't postpone difficult decisions. Now, obviously, there are decisions to be made, and I think that speaks to what I mentioned before, having a fearless team that is not afraid of facing the new that is coming. And that made a huge difference along the year. Finally, among these projects that I mentioned, we are restructuring our client relationship model. We are making this company more of an outward company, more geared to clients. This is a little bit of the process that I lived at CETIP. This involves all of the areas because it involves the market, a new way of working, and I think that this is another example of something that we faced fearlessly and that we are trying to execute in the best way possible so that the market will understand our agenda. I always talk a lot about culture, and I think that we've been doing and continue to do work related to culture that will make us proud. Again, we didn't sweep anything under the rug. We started by doing a diagnosis of both companies before the integration to pinpoint the culture of both companies and to figure out what the ideal culture would be. We had about 6 sessions in a group of 10 people that was then extended to 40 people to address culture issues. Sometimes the end of the sessions were very pushed us to reflect. Sometimes we would leave, we would drive home and think and ponder, reflect about the good things and the bad things coming from the diagnostics that came from our employees, things that they saw in the company and things that they wanted to achieve as a company. I think that we've been working on this with a lot of maturity, trying to build a new company that will join the best of both companies to meet the wishes of our employees. We worked on our cause, values, and expected behaviors for the company. We are now defining brand attributes and a little bit of the client experience we want to offer. And we know that this is not going to end here. You probably know that this project is only beginning. In the end of last month, we came from an offsite with about 150 company leaders. That's when we started cascading down these themes. Everyone was very engaged, but the project is only beginning, and it will require clear, consistent communication and practice. We have to walk the talk. So to share with you what we have done so far, we have a new cause. We work to enable, connect, and develop financial and capital markets. Together with our clients and society, we will drive the growth of Brazil. This is an easy-to-understand cause, in my opinion, and we recognize that we don't do anything alone, that we need to partner with our clients and society. We recognize that we play an important and preponderant role to make things happen, but always in partnership with the market. In our values, we defined 5 statements: correct attitude for today, tomorrow, and always. opening, openness and collaboration, proximity and client satisfaction, solidity and operational credibility, and an environment for people to develop themselves. I think that we were able to include here everything we want to put into practice. This means ethics, collaboration, teamwork, clients, because at the end of the day, the clients are the reason for us to exist, and we have our employees, our staff, seeing a new way of doing business. We're very proud of all this. Now, again, we know that this is not the end, it is only the beginning. And to end, and we're going to have time for questions in the end. I think it is important, I mentioned PMO, our projects office. And I think it is important to mention why we focused so much on this. Cicero will make a presentation about this, but in the end of this year, we ended a big cycle in terms of the company's infrastructure, a cycle that began in 2011 with Puma, replacing GDS, right? So many acronyms that I kind of get confused. I've been discussing this for so long. But we started with a trading system and then data center, phase 1, phase 2, and I think that the company now has delivered and feels very comfortable with a mature and solid infrastructure that we have in place. This is part of our values. This is not negotiable. This is important to have. The board of directors set this goal for us, and I think that we came to a full development stage, and now the company has to advance and develop more products. The company has to be more client-oriented, develop more things, test more, perhaps make more mistakes, come up with more products and see which ones will be winners and losers. This speaks to our culture. We have to know how to make mistakes, and that is the big secret of small startups. And I think that this is why I wanted to have this area reporting to me. We divided monitoring projects into 5 clusters: listed products, OTC, financing, IT projects, and corporate projects. 5 clusters, so that we can monitor and prioritize these projects in-house. The management participates in the central PMO committee to have a more seamless, agile approval process. We want to deliver more, and we want to learn. Perhaps this is the take-home message. We want to learn to develop a number of things in parallel, and this is not trivial. We have to have 30, 40, 50 projects ongoing in parallel, and we have to be able to approve, develop, monitor in a seamless and organized way and in keeping with the market. I think that the relevance of PMO, the project office, shows the relevance and how committed we are to the relevance of this project. I come to an end. I will be back during the Q&A, and now I turn the floor to Juca Andrade. Thank you very much.
Bom dia a todos. Continuando aqui a apresentação, a parte de produtos.
To continue our presentation, let's speak a little about products and clients. I want to address 3 topics here. I want to explain what we are implementing as a new relationship model for the company. I want to introduce to you an overview of how we got to this model and what we are structuring, not only my department, but the whole company. This is a change that affects not just products and clients, it affects the whole company. I will be quickly speaking about some projects that we are considering and with a focus more on 2018 in terms of the listed segments and OTC. And finally, I will speak a little bit about our guidelines in terms of fees and prices for the company. Fees and pricing. It's also under my department. So starting with a relationship model. We hired a consulting firm that helped us develop and define this new relationship model. We held some internal interviews with more than 100 leaders of B3. We had interviews with clients, face-to-face interviews, and we also had a quantitative survey. We gave our clients a questionnaire, and we had more than 500 respondents. And the executives, not just the executives, the whole management, but initially with the executives of the company, we invested a lot of time jointly and with the consulting firm to define a model, questioning the model, assessing the model, 150 plus hours of dedication of the executive group of B3 to come to this new relationship model. This was not a simple process. It was done very, very carefully because we know how important this is, particularly now when we have an integrated company. And the main points that we identified as opportunities for improvement were these three in the highlighted square or rectangle. Time to market is the first. We have to be close to the market and deliver what the market expects from us on a timely basis. And that is linked with agility of the company, which is the third item. In addition to agility, something that we clearly cannot lose and will not lose is OTC agility. We are preserving our OTC business separate from the listed products business. They're different. They have to be addressed differently. As Gilson mentioned, we have different clusters of projects, and we understand that market dynamics are different. By definition, one is a lot more standardized, the listed market, while OTC is a lot more tailor-made. We know they're different, and we want to maintain them separately. So there's no way we're going to lose that. And we also talk about proximity, partnership and proximity. We want to be close to the market and to clients because, like we said, partnerships are very important. We want to be close to our clients. We want to hear them, listen to them. We have forums of conversations with clients, and we want to foster them even more to develop the market, always in a partnership, always supporting initiatives and delivering what the market expects.
So how did we structure this? I'm telling you about my whole area and how it was distributed. If you think about both companies, BM&F and CETIP, the areas for products and clients were different. At CETIP, we had a clear distinction. Relationships, or clients, or RM, as we have with banks, which is relationship manager, and finally those in charge of products. There was a clear distinction, but not at BM&F. At that time, we had a double hat. The relations manager and the product manager would have a double hat, so the relations manager also needed to analyze products. So this is one of the first definitions that we worked on in our 150 hours. So we wanted to come to a definition, and the first brief conclusion was that it made more sense to have separate areas, RM and product manager. So when you look at this is already reflected. We have a client area and a product area, different areas. For clients, We broke it down into two areas. Everything related to Brazil coverage, and the other area for foreign clients. The relevance of international players at B3 is really, really strong. As you know, the share in listed markets, both for equities and also derivatives, it is very significant. So we have a specific coverage, even with offices overseas, for foreign clients. That's why we have this breakdown. We also have a different profile. Internationally, we have clients, or we are breaking our clients down by region. So we have the Americas, particularly the US, North America, and then Europe and Asia. This is our breakdown. And in Brazil, we break down by client type. In Brazil, we check by banks, for instance, big banks, treasury or retail. This is the top banks, and then we have investment banks combining different activities. Wholesale, for instance, brokerage. So this is another segment. Independent brokers, qualified services, buy side, and finally companies or corporate, which is a different universe, and issuers, both for fixed income, equities, banks, relationships as investment banking. We also have a law firm for equities. So this is the universe of the primary market or issuers. They provide the raw material to be traded at the secondary market. So this is the format we have. These are the levels of report to me. Felipe Paiva in charge of Brazil for clients, and then we have international. For products, we have 4 different boxes, and I will be mentioning them. The first 2 are the listed segment, and I prefer, well, we're speaking of B3 here, so I'm not going to focus so much on Bovespa or BM&F. To me, we are B3. We no longer have CETIP, Bovespa, or BM&F. What we have is the equity segment, the derivatives, which is listed, and finally OTC. So just to preserve the brand, because I'm in charge of marketing, that's why we have to respect our new brand. This is something that we are building. It's part of the integration process. So when it comes to equities and FIC, there are different areas, different markets, different dynamics. Naturally, there are many similarities. We're speaking of listed markets, but also very different things. And the same goes for the bulk of our clients. We have the same separation, commodities, equities, or FICC in English, and a separate equity area. So this is the breakdown we have for products. We have somebody in charge of equities and another person in charge of FICC. Then we have OTC, which is precisely the CETIP financing, or everything that was CETIP, except for Márcio Vanderlei's part. So everything related to OTC with Zenaro, who used to be product manager of former CETIP, and he still reports to me everything related to OTC, product development plus engineering. And now we created a new product area, which is known as IT and Market Data Services. In reality, these are products that clients want to buy from us. The market data segment is a product or a byproduct of the trading market, but information known as DVA, analytics, mark-to-market, end-of-day, IT services, everything related to colocation, Senacor, City Traders, a number of products that clients want to buy from us, and we understand this is considered to be a product. So they add to our business, our core business, but they're very important and generate a lot of revenue. We have a big opportunity here, and we have to focus on it. And then we have LATAM. We have one person in charge of investments in Latin America, and conversations with our exchanges, it remains the same. And market analysis and fees, that sees you in charge of market analysis and precisely related to internal analysis to provide manageable information for VBC and the company, and fees, like I said before, everything related to our fee policy. All policies have to go through this area. And lastly, Carlos Rato, the man in charge of marketing, new business, educational, and finally, I highlight individuals, which is something new at the company. What do you mean by individuals? Individuals is a hybrid between products and clients. It is a client, but we don't have direct access to this client. It happens through an intermediate, so we don't go directly. However, we have to think about individual experience at B3 and with B3 products, so it's important to have somebody wearing this hat, a hybrid between a product and client. Now, there are many points of contact like direct treasury, the equity market, the options market, mini market, etc. Not to mention structured notes. So there are many points. Investor, channel, access to information, so many experiences about individuals at B3, and that's why we have to focus on individuals as well. Moving forward in my presentation, on the next slide, let us talk about initiatives for products. Within the listed segment, at the top we can have market data. This is very broad in terms of market data and TVA. We have one front that has a consolidated look, OTC, listed segment. So we have a big repository of information at the company, and we have a team to analyze what can be supplied on a consolidated basis. But if we think about the existing OTC for 2018, for instance, we recently launched UpToData, which is a depository of end-of-day data, historical base. And this is for mark-to-market of portfolios. We believe we are a provider of this kind of information. And we're also launching analytics for intermediaries. We provide them with information on their performance, market share, compliance to qualification. And for market makers, we also have implementations like simple discount. In the past, we only had a binary discount, but now we can scale it up. And also have options. Keeping an eye on implicit volatility and not only premium. And BTB, for securities with IPN, we had a number of deliveries. BTB, which was the netting of the settlement of BTB loan with cash equities. We had a lot of headway. In broker, this is also, BTB is also involved in the process, market data from BTB, also known as information on loans. And now we sat down with market representatives trying to enhance at BTB, post-IPN. So we're working on that, and there are some deliveries that we're working on, like a screen for RTC, real-time clearing for settlement, and also conversation on the buy-side master account, how we're going to address payable loans and reserve requirements. So these are things that we have on our radar in order to enhance our deliveries by 2018. In addition, we're also carrying out a study to see what else we can do. For instance, a trading screen. We also taken it into account as an alternative for BTB. Now, for federal or government bonds, we also carrying out studies with the market. Here we have a demand for repos and government bonds, so this is an opportunity to study it further. As for direct treasury, we are working on applications. We want to improve capacity or access from individuals via mobile, and also improving the terms of agreement with the Secretary of National Treasury. The former one is very old, from 2001, and the market grew a lot. So we understand, as well as the Secretary, we understand we need to improve the process. In addition, we also have digital interest options. We are having conversations with the market, and we expect to see some decisions soon for 2018 with new products. We also have VIX, which is the Equity Volatility Index. We are just about to launch this index, and later on maybe we are going to give a futures option. As to OTC, we also have the trader, CETIP Trader, which is internalization. Today we have everything related to the system, to our proprietary CETIP Trader system. OTC with CCP, here's another initiative to be delivered in 2018. It has to do with integration, having all derivatives or former CETIP into OCT derivatives, and the ability to integrate and have the CCP together. So at the time of the integration, we consider this to be important. So we want to have it delivered by 2018. And liens as well of securities or papers. We had an amendment to the law which will be enforced in 2018, so we'll be able to work on the securities and liens, which is good for collaterals. And for credit rights, we are also working on it, and we also see what else we can do in this sector. LIC is another product launched by the central bank. It is already approved, and we expect to have this collateral launched. And finally, fund platform. We're also working on studies to improve the whole dynamics of funds distribution in the industry, including order funds. So I'm just touching upon the main topics. The list is very, very long. I'm just talking about the core elements. My time is up, so just to close, let me talk about the guidelines for fees. The main guidelines for fees, these were practices already adopted by the company for a while, so we're not innovating anything when it comes to fees. What we're still doing, even strongly, we consider fees as a leverage, a driver to the market. We understand there is a lot of opportunities, particularly for discount based on volume. So here we have a lot of opportunities. The market is dynamic, the profile of clients has changed, and also changes our fee policies. Some of them are quite old, and the market has changed, so our fee dynamics has to follow suit. So we can try to encourage our business. So we use fee as a driver to increase volume. And here we see a lot of opportunities. Another thing that we're working on is incentive programs. This is very common, particularly to attract foreign players, because we compete with foreign exchange and we want to be more attractive. So foreigners are searching for opportunities, and we have to bring them to Brazil. So we also have incentive policies for these foreign players, and also market makers and other policies. They are important focus to develop our market. We do have a very good operating leverage. Nadoni is going to explain better, but we can cope with larger volumes. So naturally, we do have this operating leverage. And when it comes to fee, we have to share this leverage with our clients and keep part of the share. So now we see another opportunity to the company and to the market. And something we always do here is to check benchmark rates with other exchange, other CSDs, and compare prices and services. That's a tough industry because the scope of services are different, but we look very carefully to other exchanges so we can have a good position and make sure we have a fair price considering the products and services we deliver. So these are the main guidelines for the fee policy we have adopted. So now I think I turn the floor over to Cícero.
Bem, bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
Como o Gilson falou, a gente
Like
terminou exatamente há 3 meses dos
3 months
projetos
ago, we
mais
concluded
complexos
one of the
da
most
história da
complex
companhia,
projects in the
que foi a
history of the
integração das
company, which was the
clearings,
integration of
segmentos
clearing
BMF e
houses of
Bovespa.
BMF Bovespa.
Então, ufa, né?
So,
Terminamos
wow,
tudo 100%
we made
instalado,
it,
tudo
everything
rodando,
100% up and
funcionando.
running.
Eu gostaria só de
If I
destacar
may, I would
algumas
just like to
estatísticas aqui
highlight
para
some
vocês
statistics
sobre os primeiros 3
about
meses
the
do
first
projeto,
3
fazer alguns
months of the
comentários
project
sobre não
and make
todas
some
as
comments,
estatísticas, mas
not about
algumas
all the stats, but some
as
of
mais interessantes.
the
Né?
most
Em primeiro
interesting
lugar,
statistics.
na data da
Firstly,
implantação, a gente teve uma
in the
redução total
inception
de
date, we
margem
have a
requerida,
total
considerando
reduction
todos
of
os clientes,
required
de
margin
cerca de
of
21 bilhões de
approximately
reais. Então,
21
se a
billion
gente
reals.
seguir, se a gente
So,
considerar as
if
duas
we
fases do
consider
projeto, a
both
entregue
phases of
agora
the project,
recentemente, a
the
que foi
recent
entregue
delivery
antes, só para o
and the
universo de
previous one,
derivativos
just for
financeiros,
financial
a gente
derivatives,
totalizou
then we
cerca de
totaled
41
approximately
bilhões de reais de
41
devolução
million
de margem
reals
para o mercado.
of margin return
E
to the
também agora
market.
com o IPNV2,
And now
a gente
with
implantou o
IPN
depósito de
V2, we
garantias no exterior de
implemented the
treasuries
collateral
americanas,
deposit abroad,
dólares,
US
treasuries emitidas pelo
Treasury,
governo alemão, em
and also the
depositárias lá fora,
German in
recebidas pela
CSDs
nossa
abroad
clearing.
received by
Então, isso já
our
está 100%
clearinghouse. So this is
operacional e os nossos
100%
clientes
up and
já
running,
estão
and our
utilizando.
clients are already using
Nesses
it.
primeiros 3 meses,
In the first 3 months,
dividi alguns números,
I
a
broke
gente
down
teve
some
uma
numbers.
média de cerca
Our
de
average was
20 mil
approximately
movimentações de
20,000
garantias por dia,
collateral
clientes
moves per
depositando,
day,
trocando, tirando.
trading
Essa é uma
daily.
estatística que tem
So this
apresentado uma certa
statistics
tendência de
has
crescimento,
proved to
principalmente em
be
função
a growing
da
trend
participação dos investidores de
owing
varejo em
to
mini contratos.
retail and
A
mini
gente teve
contract
também nos primeiros 3
investors.
meses
In the
cerca
first
de
3 months, we also had
595 mil operações de repasse
595,000
realizadas
on
entre
lending
o broker que
trades
executa
between
o
the broker
negócio e o
in
broker
charge of
que
the
recebe
business
esse
and the
negócio
broker that
para fins de
receives the
liquidação.
business for settlement
Essa é uma
purposes.
estatística que
So
a
this
gente espera
statistics,
observar
we
crescimento
expect to
nos
see some
próximos
growth
meses e também nos
in the
próximos
coming
anos,
months and coming
principalmente em
years,
virtude de uma
in
mudança que
virtue
veio com o
of
IPN,
a
que
change
é
with
a introdução do
IPN,
conceito
which
de
is the
carry
introduction
broker no
of the
segmento
carry
Bovespa.
broker
No
segment
segmento
in Bovespa.
BMF, há muito
In the
tempo
MNF,
funcionava muito bem o
it
conceito de
used to work
repasse,
very
por meio
well,
do
the
qual o
on
cliente
lending.
pode escolher
The
vários
client
brokers
could
para a
choose
execução
from
da
several
ordem,
brokers
mas
to
essas
work on
ordens
the
são depois
order, but the
repassadas para
orders would be
único
later
carrying
on be
broker
transferred to
que
a single
concentra a
carrying
chamada
broker,
de margem, a custódia
concentrating
e a
the
liquidação.
custody,
Então,
margin,
essa era uma
and settlement.
funcionalidade,
So
não é
that
que ela
was a
não existia no
functionality.
segmento Bovespa
I'm not
antes do
saying
IPN,
it
ela
didn't
até existia,
exist in
chamava cliente
Bovespa. It
qualificado,
was known
mas
as
ela tinha
qualified
muitas
client,
restrições,
but there were
ela
many
tinha muitas
restrictions at that
limitações
time,
e
a
na
lot of
prática não
constraints,
funcionava
and
bem.
didn't work well in
A gente teve
practice.
também nesse período
Over this
cerca
time
de
frame, we had approximately
3.720 operações de empréstimo
3,720
registradas
loans
por dia em
registered
média.
per day
As
on
novidades
average.
com o IPN, como vocês
As to
devem ter
IPN,
acompanhado,
as you
foi
can see,
a questão da
we had some
divulgação do
novelties
market
like
data
the
das
announcement of
operações
the market
de
data on the
empréstimo, então
operations,
nível de
loan operations,
granularidade, de
so the
transparência muito
granularity
maior
and
em relação ao que a
transparency
gente tinha
became much
ontem. A gente
higher
passou a
compared to the
divulgar
past.
a taxa
And now
total
we're
paga
announcing the
pelo
total
tomador
rate
e a taxa também
by the
recebida
borrower
pelo
and also
doador, a
received
diferença
by the
entre as
donor.
duas
The
a
difference
comissão dos
between both,
intermediários, e a gente
commission,
também passou a
intermediaries,
liquidar os
and now we're
contratos de
also
empréstimo
settling
na
loan
volta deles,
agreements
na
upon
devolução, não
return,
mais de forma bruta,
no longer on
e
a
sim
gross
pelo net
basis, but
da
on a
clearing,
net basis of the
ou seja, por meio
clearinghouse.
de compensação
In other
também
words,
com as
through
operações de
clearing
compra e venda no
with
mercado à vista
buy
e com
and
os
sell in the
exercícios de
cash
opção. A
market
principal
with
vantagem disso é
options
que
as
o
well.
doador que
The
chama o
benefit
contrato de
is that the
volta e
donor
vende, ele
that
tem um
brings
netting entre o
the
contrato
contract
que ele,
back
entre o
has a
papel que ele vai
netting
receber de volta
between
e o papel que
the
ele vendeu e tem que
securities
entregar, e
back
esse
and what you
netting
have to
minimiza
deliver,
o risco
and
de
this
falha de
netting
entrega,
minimizing
simplesmente
any
pelo efeito
risks
de
in
compensação.
delivery due to the
Olhando também
clearing
os 3
purpose.
primeiros meses, a
If we
gente
focus on the
liquidou
first 3 months, we
9,9
settled
bilhões de
9.9
reais
billion
por
reals
dia em
per
média.
day
Só que
on
esses
average.
9,9
However,
bi,
out of the
qual que é o
9.9,
conceito aqui?
what
Quando
is
a
the
gente faz a
concept?
compensação
This is
no
when
nível
we do
do
the
investidor,
clearing at the final investor level. So if every day we added for the final investor the total volume due, and on the other hand, the total volume to be received, it would come to 9.9 billion on average per day, naturally considering the netting and the merger of both clearing houses. When you think about clearing, no longer at the investor level, but the clearing member, which is the flow that effectively goes through CCP account, the daily average goes down to 1.6 billion per day in 3 months, owing to the netting or the clearing in the clearing member. And finally, we had a total up to now of 283 buy-side institutions that enrolled e-market, a new service which is a functionality through which the clearinghouse sends information in order to have business reconciliation, allocated trading, fees, outstanding issues, moves, collaterals, settlement amounts. So all this information is daily packaged and submitted directly to buy-side clients, and not only through intermediaries as we did in the past. Now, a couple of words on the merger, the whole merger process, and the main impacts on operations, B3 operations. Clearly, there were significant impacts, but I would add that impacts were not so dramatic, mainly owing to the nature or the activities add to one another, BM&F and CETIP. So if you think about different areas, firstly, issuer regulation. Naturally, we had 2 processes to analyze fixed income, and we had a cluster of analysis for BM&F, another for CETIP, and unified, standardized, and now we have up and running a single process to analyze this real estate fixed income offer. We also have for equities, so both for fixed income and equities, in many circumstances, we may be with the same issuer. So it made more sense at the end of the day, both for equity and also for fixed income offer under the same management, as much as possible to provide the same experience for issuers who come to B3. As to trading, now we have Puma and also the trader platform under the same management, Mário Palhares, and that brought some synergy and gains of efficiency. And as we speak, the operations area is pretty much focused on a project to revisit the contract terms of the trader. Our main purpose is to have the technology developed in-house. And once we have the knowledge transfer from the supplier into B3's IT team, we're confident that we'll make it easier to develop this platform in-house and to have it integrated to our legacy systems. As Juca mentioned briefly, when it comes to risk management, we have this project, an important project that is taken a while. It is the integration between the NOMI platform, which is the market platform, to register OTC derivatives, but which doesn't provide CCP. So we're going to integrate this platform to our own CCP platform, so the market can work on registration for OTC derivatives, as it always did with NOMI, with an additional option. Yes, I want to have CCP functionality, or no, I don't need it. I don't need this functionality. So we're going to integrate both systems so we can provide them both to some OTC derivatives with a CCP as well. In both universes or environments, we had 2 pricing platforms. Naturally, at B3, it made no sense having a DI curve for securities and another for BM&F. So now we're consolidating. And I would say that the most heavily affected area
é a área de depositária e de registro,
is
né?
registration
Então,
and depositories.
eu diria que a principal
So I would say
mensagem
the
é que
take-home message
depois de uma análise de prós e
after
contras,
an analysis
o que a
of
gente
pros and
concluiu
cons,
é que a
our
gente não vai
conclusion
ter
is
o grande
that
IPN
we're
das
not
depositárias,
going
ou
to
seja,
have
não
the big
existirá grande
of
projeto, não existe a
depositories.
necessidade,
We don't
na
feel
nossa
the
visão,
need
de desenvolver
to
enorme
develop a
projeto de
huge
construção de uma
project to
terceira
build a
depositária
third
que no futuro
depository,
iria
which in the
absorver as
future
duas
would
depositárias
absorb
atualmente
both
existentes.
that
A
currently
nossa
exist.
visão é que a gente vai ter uma
We
única
believe we're
depositária
going to have
com
a
duas
single
plataformas
depository with two
tecnológicas
IT platforms,
ancorando e alicerçando esse
anchoring and
serviço de
supporting
depositária única.
the
E
single
sempre que fizer
depository.
sentido, ou
And whenever it
internamente, ou
makes
sob a
sense,
perspectiva dos
in-house
nossos
or
clientes, a
under
gente
the
vai ter
light
uma
of our
camada de integração
clients' needs,
entre esses
we're
dois
going to have an
sistemas para
integration
propiciar uma
layer
experiência melhor
to
para o
provide a
cliente.
better
Então,
experience
exemplo
to
é
our
extrato. A
clients.
gente não vai
One
ter,
example
a gente
is
tem, a
Strato.
gente não vai ter um extrato para renda fixa e um extrato
Statements,
para
for
renda
instance.
variável.
We're
Vai
not
ser um
going to
extrato
have one
único.
for
Se a
variable
gente
income
tiver
or
a
equities
necessidade,
and
a
another
gente
for
tiver
fixed
necessidade
income.
de transferir
If the
ativo de
client
uma
needs to
plataforma para
transfer
outra
an asset
plataforma,
from
a
one
gente também vai
platform
ter
to another,
processo
we're also
otimizado
going to
interno
have
para
a
fazer
smooth
isso.
in-house
Enfim, e outras
process.
funcionalidades que podem
And
ser
we'll add
desenvolvidas
other
com o tempo para
functionalities
integrar
that may
esses
be
dois
developed
ambientes.
over
É
time
uma
to
plataforma
integrate both
tecnológica de
environments. So,
depositária
an
com
IT platform
especialização
for
em renda variável,
depositories
uma outra com
specialize in equity,
especialização em renda fixa
another
e
specialize
integração
in
entre as
fixed
duas
income,
sempre
and the
que fizer
integration
sentido.
of both
A gente também
whenever
está
it makes
trabalhando na
sense. We're
migração
also working on the
gradual de todo o
gradual
estoque de posições
migration
em aberto,
of the
títulos
inventory
registrados
of
que estão no
outstanding
para o nome.
securities from
Então esse estoque ele vem
e-balcão
decrescendo ao
to
longo do
NOMI.
tempo até um momento
The
em que o
inventory
balcão
is
poderá
decreasing
ser
over time,
completamente
and then
desativado e a gente
e-balcão
vai
will
então
be totally
consolidar todas as operações de
excluded
balcão no
and will
nome.
be consolidating
E
all
por fim,
OTC
a
deals
gente
under
também
the
está
NOMI
finalizando o processo
platform.
de unificação
And we're
das
just
áreas
about
de
to
cadastro
unify
e de
the
acompanhamento dos
registration
processos de
areas and
PLD,
follow-up
que são intrínsecos às
of spot
atividades das
price,
depositárias e também
which
do
has
ambiente
to
de
do
registro.
with depository and also
Mudando de
registration.
tópico, né, vocês todos
Changing
sabem que
gears,
durante o nosso
you all
processo de
know
discussão
that
com
during
os
our
reguladores
discussions with the
sobre a
regulating
fusão,
authorities
nós
about the
assumimos um
merger,
compromisso perante a CVM e também perante o CAD de prestar
we
serviços de
committed
pós-negociação
ourselves
para
to
outras infraestruturas
provide
de mercado que
post-deal
eventualmente viessem a demandar esses
services to
serviços.
other market
Os nossos sistemas, tanto na parte de
stakeholders.
CCP,
So
na
both for
hipótese de uma outra
CCP,
bolsa de ações,
assuming
como
another
também
exchange
no
comes
serviço de
through, and
depositário, na
also
hipótese de
for
uma outra
CSD,
clearing de ações
should we
que queira
have
se
another
conectar
clearing
ao
house that wants to be
depositário para fazer as
connected to the
transferências dos
depository to
ativos.
transfer
Nos dois,
assets.
em relação
In
aos
both
dois
scenarios,
ambientes, os
in
nossos
both
sistemas
environments,
estão
our
100%
systems are
prontos do ponto de
100% ready.
vista tecnológico, do
From
ponto
the
de
IT
vista
aspect,
operacional, também do
operations,
ponto de vista de
and also when it
regulamentos.
comes to
Não há
regulation.
nenhum grande esforço,
There is
nenhum
no big
grande
effort
investimento
required,
marginal que
no
tenha que ser
marginal
feito
investment
para que a
pending
B3
to
possa
make
oferecer
B3
esses serviços.
able to provide these services.
O que há é processo
What
agora
we
de
have
arbitragem
is
que
an
ocorre em
arbitration
sigilo, esse
process which
processo
is
da definição
confidential
do preço
in order to
da
define the
transferência de
price of
ativos
the
na
transfer of
depositária,
assets
na hipótese
in the
de prestação
depository
desse serviço para
should
uma
these
outra
services be
CCP.
rendered to
Então,
a
esse
different
processo de
CCP.
arbitragem,
So this
ele
arbitration
também
process,
previsto no
which
acordo
also
que foi feito com o
provided
CAD.
for
Inicialmente, a gente
in
teve um
the
período de
agreement with
120
CADI.
dias
At
de
first we had
negociação bilateral.
120
Infelizmente,
day
não foi
of
possível chegar
bilateral
a consenso com a
negotiation.
outra parte
Unfortunately, we did
interessada.
not come to an
Automaticamente foi
agreement,
acionado
so
esse processo de
automatically
arbitragem.
we triggered the arbitration.
Como o Gilson mencionou brevemente,
As Gilson briefly mentioned, I would say that 2017 is a big landmark for the company, not only because of the merger, but also because we closed a long cycle of investments to modernize the technology infrastructure of the market as a whole.
Basicamente, quase todos aqui acompanharam
Almost
desde o
all of
começo,
you
a
have
gente
followed
iniciou
this
há vários
process
anos
from the
atrás,
beginning.
que era, na
A few
época,
years
mais
ago, we
urgente,
started
a
with
substituição
what was
das
most
plataformas de
urgent,
negociação
the replacement of our old trading platforms, replaced by Puma. We integrated the clearings, first and second phase, and completed our main data center at Santana do Parnaíba, where we have hosted both Puma and the new clearing, integrated and up and running. The benefits derived from this process were an increased processing capacity of all of our systems, both trading and post-trading systems, reduction of latency, not only in trading, but also time necessary to process operations of the clearing and to calculate risks. It is extremely important to have speed in calculating risk. Greater operational resilience, optimization of processes, optimization of margins, and particularly now with the new architecture ready, more compact and optimized, a better time to market, to launch new products. When we think about all of this cycle of investments in infrastructure, and we remember the trading floor on May 18th, one day after the leak of the plea bargain of JBS, we had a lot of volatility, the dollar exchange increasing, circuit breaks at Bovespa, more than 3,000 auctions being automatically triggered on that day, given the volatility of securities and negotiation tunnels that we have, dozens of millions of trading electronic messages processed. Several times the historic record, and everything worked smoothly, practically no complaints from our clients in terms of operational stability of our market infrastructure at a critical moment, at a stressful moment. And that's when we realize how important infrastructure investments really are.
Então, no novo ciclo,
in this new cycle,
o novo ciclo que a gente espera, né, a nova fase,
in this new phase,
finalizada essa
once
fase
we
anterior,
now that we have completed the prior phase, is a cycle of new projects, more dynamic projects that tend to be important, however, less complex, and with a shorter development life cycle. And I would say that these projects are divided into two: projects linked to new products and improvement of existing products and services. In the second block, projects related to risk mitigation, management, and operational improvement. As for the second cluster of projects, I would like to mention one, the new line, Novo Line. It is a project in which we've been working for about a year and a half. We'll complete it in the end of 2018.
Então, só para contextualizar, a questão do
just to put things into context. Pre-trading risk is always present in managing a CCP environment because the CCP, central counterparty, becomes the counterparty of a business when a transaction is closed at Puma. However, the risk calculation and the margin call comes only later. There is a time lag between the moment the clearing is exposed to that risk as a counterpart and the moment when we have collateralization. That's where the Novo Line comes in. In the pre-trading scenario, it controls risk, establishes limits, and if necessary, breaks the operations before the operations are closed. The current line version is very simple and quite outdated. It's basically used for frequent investors. It's not a universal usage system in our CCP, and there is a usability issue because the clearing and the broker cannot establish a global limit risk in a simple way for every investor. They have to establish a limit for every type of contract and asset. If an investor intends to potentially trade 50 different assets, the broker has to establish 50 different limits and manage that all along. The Novo Line is a lot more complex and sophisticated. In addition to preserving the possibility of establishing limits individually for every type of contract and asset, it is possible to establish a single risk limit for the whole portfolio. As usability improves, we'll expand the universe, and gradually more and more clients will be using this tool. It will consider the portfolio as a whole, not only operations closed in a given day, but all outstanding operations, and everything will be joined. And we are going to have a limit for negative day trade. If we have a bug, a logic problem, if people start buying expensive, selling cheap, we're going to have a system to monitor and step on the brake of this kind of behavior that can happen, and we establish a limit for the carrying broker that receives the operations, aggregates the risk, and if it goes beyond a certain threshold, they have to stop the operation. The final message is that this project that will be delivered in the beginning of next year reduces our risk exposure. It generates value for our brokers, which is fundamental because they are also exposed to this risk. The first loss is with the broker as the one responsible for the operation. It's not at the CCP. It is a project. I guess the central bank is a fan of this project, and it is a project that at the same time that it does everything that I've just mentioned, it raises the bar for the competition because, in my view, it establishes a new benchmark for risk management and will probably establish a regulatory floor for risk management real time in a stock exchange environment. And with that, I think I have to invite Marcus van der. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, as Gilson mentioned, I joined the company more recently. My whole career was in more than 20 years, working in the financial market, in banks, retail banking, working with loans, loan portfolio of all types of products, among them auto loans. So I start mentioning SNG, the Brazilian Liens database. In light of what has been happening, I would like to clarify this. When we talk about SNG, if you don't know it, technically, SNG, the Brazilian Liens database, became a big platform. When it was created, back in 1997, one of its main goals was to provide security to banks and financial institutions which operated granting auto loans, given that the volume of frauds was quite high back then because a vehicle was offered as a collateral in more than one auto loan contract. That same vehicle. With the deployment of the system, the banks had more security. And after the deployment of the system, never did we have any more cases. In 20 years, the system has been up and running. We haven't lost a case given the duplicity of collateral because that system offered security. I can tell you that because until recently I was at the other side, and I had worked with auto loans since the beginning of the 1990s. Now this platform, SNG, became so important that today the way people talk about it in the media, they make it look like a simple system that includes liens or financial restrictions, as we call them. But actually, SNG supports banks along the whole credit cycle, from commercial planning, as we see on the slide, helping during the granting of loans, in the process of formalization, at the time of payments, to add agility, and in the after sales. Just to bring you some numbers. This system, well, it took 10 years for the banks to be able to deploy it all over Brazil. It started in 1997, and in 2007, that's when we deployed it in the last state traffic department, DETRAN. Until 2007, the auto loan portfolio amounted to about 74 billion. This portfolio in 2012 reached 245 billion. And the peak of inclusion of liens in a year was about 8 billion in a year. Of course, that was also pushed by the economy, but this growth was only possible because of the system. Before SNG, the average time frame to release payment or an auto loan was 3 days. given the whole process that we had in place to ensure that that vehicle was packed to that contract, and still we had fraud. Today, the average time frame to release funds is about 1 hour. That increased the client satisfaction. It added security to car dealers and to the banks.
Passando aqui para o próximo slide, aqui eu queria também fazer uma explicação
Here, I would like to explain a differentiation of two things that people tend to mix up and consider as one single thing. SNG, the Brazilian Liens database, is a private platform fed by bank information. It is connected today with the Brazilian Central Bank, with Denatran, and with all the Brazilian DTRANs, or state traffic departments. It is a network that joins all of these parties. So again, it helps in terms of consultation. We look at vehicle information, financial restrictions, liens, administrative restrictions, legal restrictions to ensure that the vehicle is in the right condition. When we are financing a used vehicle, we have a process to value that vehicle with photographs that we submit to the platform so that we can make sure that that good that is being financed is at the state that the seller claims it is. Now that brings along a number of other services that we can generate for banks. And we can manage all of this information that is circulating on the platform, and we can deliver this kind of information real time to the banks. And on the right, you see the contracts system. The contracts system, to put it simply, is nothing more than a hub that connects banks with the DTRANs. So the second moment after we include a lien or a financial restriction, and after payment of the operation, the bank submits the information. Some DTRANs require photos, so we include images of these contracts, and we take the data and images to DTRAN, and the DTRAN, the State Traffic Department, will register the contract. B3 never registers contracts. I think that there's some confusion in the market. We have been frequently asked about this, but B3 does not register any contract. What we do in the contracts system is to submit information to the TRAN, and the TRAN will register the contract. Either the TRAN will do it themselves, or they will have a partner, what we call the companies that register contracts. And all of this information involves an operational process that we offer, a service that we provide to the banks. We issue the payment slips so that people can pay the fees to trigger registration and issuance of documentation. So the contracts system is exactly how I explained just now. Here, just a little bit of information. Again, going back to SNG, the Brazilian Liens database. For SNG, we process 100% of transactions in financial restriction information in auto loans. And here, I think there's a number that I believe is very important. This number applies to September. This year, we have included 5 million liens until the end of September. That already shows that the market is rallying. It's showing a growth. There's a two-digit growth in auto loans. And currently, we process 70% of transactions in the market, submitting information and images to the state traffic departments, the DTRANs, so that they can register. We have submitted about 3.6 million data for registration. year to date. And here it is important to mention that this contracts platform is flexible because we have a number of ways to deliver this information and these images to DTRAN. Or every company that the DTRANs hire, well, they work with a different format, with a different type of file, with a different technology. And this hub, the contracts system, is quite flexible and adaptable to deliver this information and to connect the DTRANs and the banks. And the system does it in a very fast way. Now, talking a little bit about real estate loans. We currently have a real estate platform that is structured, and we have two very important services that we're providing to the market, which are collateral evaluation. It is a product that is growing a lot in volume, and this process is adding a lot of value because it handles the integration between financial institutions, us, and the evaluators that manage the whole cycle. And we ensure the matching of data and reconciliation of prices, or price that comes from the evaluator. And we do validation of real estate prices by region, contributing to the prevention of fraud. And we also have the connection with notary public offices and with companies and financial institutions. We integrate financial institutions and the real estate registry notaries. And as of October 31st, we started operating in compliance with Resolution 4088 of the Central Bank that consolidates information regarding real estate collaterals, monitoring, and reconciliation. And here, to close, I bring you some more information. When we speak about vehicles and auto loans, we see strong signs of growth resumption after years of crisis. And we have a new business model for SNG and for the contracts system after the regulatory change by DENITRAN. It is a process in which we've been working hard together with other stakeholders in the market, banks and FEBRABAN, the Federation of Banks. Because we understand that this was not the first attack. We've witnessed such attacks when they try to make the whole process that is private, make it public. But this is private. It has no interference from the state. The process works, like I said, it adds value to the whole chain. It is a process in which the cost of SNG is paid by the banks. There's no pass-through to clients. In our expectations, so we understand that something will be done and that things will not remain as they are now. As for real estate, with the expected growth resumption, we can also see signs of growth resumption in the real estate market. We believe that we have to expand our services in this segment. We are working to quickly connect with the real estate registries. There are more than 4,000 real estate registries in Brazil, and we are working fast with these institutions that gather all of the real estate registries so that we can expand our platform, our registration platform. There are new opportunities in the market. We are expanding our action with financial institutions. My team in products and my commercial team, we're all very focused so that in the coming year we'll have some new products. We're not going to have any major product that will be like a core product for the company as we have today, but we have a number of projects or products actually that we intend to launch along the year that will definitely bring more ease of use and streamline loan granting by financial institutions. That I am on time. Now, I invite Rodrigo Nardoni, IT Technology and Security VP.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
Eu vou falar, trazer aqui pouquinho
I will be speaking a little about what we've been doing. Some of it has been mentioned before regarding a solid approach of our platform. We have designed a data center resulting from the merger. I'll speak a bit cybersecurity, and I will touch on innovation and what we're doing in this area.
Espero ficar credor aqui, ficar vendedor no mercado de à vista de minutos e depois.
I hope to speak within the time allotted to me. Maybe I'll even end earlier, and I'll sell my minutes.
Daquilo que muito que o Cícero já disse e do próprio
We're stressing what Cicero and Gilson already said. I think it's always important to stress this point.
Nós concluímos,
We completed B3, completed a big cycle of technological modernization with the implementation of the second phase. And in addition to all of the benefits that Cicero mentioned, I would like to highlight availability and technology security of this platform. Not just of this platform, but of all of the other platforms of the company. In recent years, we were able to submit the platforms to stressful scenarios, and we were able to prove that it works in our trading and post-trading systems. When Eduardo Campos' plane crashed, when we had the impeachment of President Rousseff, when President Lula was taken to testify, when Trump was elected in the U.S., and when the President Temer was charged in May. We saw peak trading activity, but we were able to handle it, and that proves the resilience of all B3 systems. In 2014, our derivatives platform was prepared to process 250,000 deals a day in post-trading, and now we have a platform that is prepared to about 7 million transactions. And we have a goal of doing even more than 7 million transactions in a foreseeable future. In a more recent movement, not speaking about technology update, but it was a different move that brought a lot of benefits for the company on the market. We moved our main site of our trading platform from this building to our B3 data center at Santana do Parnaíba, a project that we called Blackbird. And this modernization brought us a real gain of approximately 30% in the standard deviation of orders and about 20% improvement in terms of total latency, RTT, round trip time, and this was a great benefit for the whole market. Speaking about other platforms, in November we hit a record mark in the processing of TEDs. B3 processes all TEDs and docs, and we reached the mark of 4,230,000 TEDs processed with no issues whatsoever. Very smoothly done. And in the OTC, when we brought the data center from Rio de Janeiro to São Paulo, that was one of the moves. When we do that, we'll have about 20% gain in performance of the platform as a whole. Speaking about data centers, I would like to share with you the current situation and the consolidation plan that was designed as part of the integration plan, what we call B3 together. The company has 10 data centers spread in 2 states and 4 different cities.
Desde março, nós
Since
trabalhamos
March,
para
we've
desenhar um plano
been
de
working to design a
consolidação,
consolidation
tendo
plan for these plans.
a maximização
The
dos
assumption, the underlying
investimentos já
assumption is to
realizados
maximize
pelas
investments
companhias
already
CITIP
made by the
e
companies,
BVMF,
CITIP
a
or
continuidade da
BVMF,
movimentação planejada
continuity
pelas companhias e
of
fatores de mitigação de
movement
risco,
and
que
risk
são importantes
mitigation
pro
factors
desenho
that
final.
are important for the final design.
De ações e derivativos, mais OTC,
Processing
insights
of
principais diferentes,
equities,
dentre outros
derivatives
quesitos importantes
will
para
be in
esse
different sites.
plano. Assim, até 2021,
Until
conforme
2021,
mostra a
as the illustration
ilustração rapidamente
shows,
para vocês. Precisa chamar alguém de TI.
I need to have somebody from IT to help me with the slide changing. But the take-home messages, we have all 10 data centers today. I wanted to show you an illustration of how this will be changed over time, but the illustration for some reason did not work. And the take-home messages, by 2021, our plan is to concentrate all our processing in 3 data centers. The data center in this building, where we are, the one that was built in Santana do Parnaíba, and the 3rd data center, that hasn't been defined yet, will probably be a third-party data center. With this triangulation, as we can see, we intend to have the processing of equities and derivatives in a main data center, the one at Santana do Parnaíba, and processing of CITIP Financing and CITIP Securities. All that processing will happen in the rented third-party data center. In case of problems, we will not have to act in contingency for all segments of the company. That will hugely mitigate the risk in case of disaster.
Passando para a segurança da informação,
Talking about information security now,
8 meses,
in the last
agora, em
8
dezembro,
months,
iniciamos
we
a
designed
pavimentação tecnológica
and
da
kicked off
companhia.
the technology updating of the company. And one of the first points in which we worked was to integrate cybersecurity. Given the risk that exists in that area for B3, actually not just for B3, all companies that have technology as the foundation to deliver their services and products have to devote themselves to protect their computational environment and be constantly concerned about cybersecurity. This transcends IT security, integrity, reliability, confidentiality of data. But it has to do also with the ability to continue to provide services. That's why we have to talk about cybersecurity. It means a more holistic approach to security so that we can protect ourselves from hackers that can prevent the company from providing services. We consolidated our organizational structure and we monitor security for all 3 segments. We have a unified structure. With the support of a renowned consulting company, KPMG, we created a security framework. I don't think that you can read everything that is in there, but we have an operationalizing model of cybersecurity in different layers. We cover, for example, the governance model, the master plan of the company. At the tactical level, we reviewed all of our standards, policies, and guidelines, and we reviewed our procedures, vulnerabilities, etc. This safety structure, complemented by tools, instruments, and standards in addition to the master plan, will help us prepare for the challenges that IT imposes to our company.
We did everything we can, all our efforts to be constantly up to date, but we are confident that hackers and anybody who comes to try to bring you down are always faster. So it's important to bear that in mind, so we keep our eyes open.
Falando pouco mais de
integração, speaking more about
a
integration,
tecnologia se preocupando com a pavimentação,
we have to pave the way in our IT structure at the company.
e facilitar a comunicação,
in order to make it
mobilidade,
easier
facilitar todos
to
os outros
communicate,
processos
to
da casa
provide
para que essa
mobility,
integração
everything
aconteça
in-house
da
to
maneira
make
mais
integration
rápida e
happen
mais suave possível.
as
Nós
fast and
trabalhamos
smooth
na
possible.
pavimentação da infraestrutura de
So we
hardware
are
e
trying
software,
to
então hoje nós
work
temos
on
e-mail
hardware,
unificado,
software,
ferramentas
we
de
have
comunicação instantânea
unified
unificadas,
email,
a rede de
instant
escritórios totalmente
message,
unificada,
our
você
office
pode trabalhar
network,
aqui na
totally
15, na praça, em
unified. You
Alphaville,
can
enfim,
work
isso é
in different
transparente para
sites,
qualquer profissional que tenha vindo, seja da
and it's
BMF,
very
seja da
transparent
CETIP, link
from
entre
BMNF,
esses sites,
CETIP,
os
a
próprios
link between
serviços
different
de TI,
sites.
como serviço de atendimento,
IT
service desk
services
unificado,
like service desk,
mudanças, gestão
this
de
is also
mudanças e problemas,
unified,
ferramentas
management
comuns a
of
toda a casa e, por
problems,
fim, a monitoração da
and last but
operação,
not
que é um ponto
least,
extremamente importante.
monitoring the
Ou seja,
operation. This
nós
is very
conseguimos, nós
important.
temos hoje os mesmos
Today
processos,
we have the same
procedimentos
processes,
para monitorar as
procedures
operações, seja
in
de
order
equity,
to
seja de
monitor
derivativos,
equity,
seja de balcão,
derivatives,
seja da unidade
OTC,
de financiamentos. Isso
or
traz conforto
CETIP financing.
e
So
uma
it brings
segurança muito grande
comfort
para a
and a lot of
continuidade
assurance to
dos nossos
continue
negócios.
our business.
Por fim,
Lastly,
pincelando um pouco a inovação,
a couple of words on innovation.
vale dizer que o arcabouço de inovação que nós
The
desenhamos,
framework
para
of
B3, ele
innovation
contém o
that we
melhor
designed for
de
B3
CETIP e
has
o
the
melhor
best
de
from
BMF
CETIP
Bovespa.
and
Nós
from
unimos o
BMF
programa
Bovespa.
4C,
We have the 4C
que tem
program
como pilares a
and the
proximidade com
pillars
aceleradoras,
are
startups,
proximity with
fintechs,
accelerators,
e uma coisa muito
startup,
interessante que é o
fintechs,
envolvimento dos
and
profissionais da própria
also
companhia
having the companies
num programa
staff
denominado
involved
SEARS, para mentoring
in
e
a
contato
program
com essas
known as
startups,
SEARS,
com
for mentoring
essas aceleradoras,
and
o que é
contact
bom
with
para elas, né? Ou
accelerators
seja, nós levamos o
and
nosso
startups. So
conhecimento
it's
a
win-win.
essas empresas que estão
We share
nascendo,
knowledge with
nós
these companies
fomentamos o
that are coming
desenvolvimento
up,
dessas
we
empresas e
foster
também
their development,
damos a possibilidade
and we
aos
also
nossos profissionais,
allow
né,
our
dentro dos nossos valores
professionals,
definidos na nossa cultura,
considering
um ambiente
the
para
values
que as
of
pessoas
our
possam se
culture,
desenvolver.
we
Nós
give
damos a elas
an
essa
opportunity for
oportunidade de
people
conhecer o novo,
to build their
de conhecer
knowledge
como
and
empresas
get to know
inovadoras estão
something
pensando
new and
hoje,
find
né?
out how
E
innovative
temos
companies
também ainda
are
iniciativas de
thinking
engajamento em novas
today.
tecnologias, como
We
o
also
nosso
have
laboratório de
initiatives in
desenvolvimento em
new
blockchain
technologies
e
like our
iniciativas
lab
de machine learning.
and blockchain
Nós
and machine
estruturamos ali no
learning.
segundo desenho um radar de
We
tecnologias.
also have an
Esse
IT
radar ele é bastante
radar.
importante porque
It is a very important
como esse
radar.
radar tem uma metodologia por
It
trás disso,
brings
aquele
a
cinza escuro,
methodology
cinza mais
behind
claro,
it.
nós listamos
Lighter or
tecnologias
darker green.
emergentes,
We
dois,
have
tentamos
emerging
entender o quão
technologies and we
madura
try
está
to
essa
understand
tecnologia,
how
três,
mature the
quão próxima do
technology
nosso
really
negócio,
is
qual a
and
proximidade
how
ou
close
benefício
it
que essas
is to our
tecnologias podem
business
trazer para o
and
nosso
the
negócio
benefits they
e
can
qual é o
add
nosso
to our
nível de
business and
prontidão
also
com
our
relação a essas
level
tecnologias.
of
Respondendo
promptness.
essas perguntas, nós conseguimos
Once
definir
we
exatamente
answer all
quais
these
dessas
questions, we
tecnologias
can
nós devemos
define
atacar
which
primeiro,
one
dado que
of
nossos
these
recursos são
technologies
escassos
we
e
should
nós não
address
podemos sair
first,
atacando todas as
because we
tecnologias
cannot
emergentes
do
que aparecem no mercado.
or cope with all of them
E
at
por
the
fim,
same
vale
time.
registrar que
And
nós
lastly,
ampliamos, né, a
we
nossa
expanded
aproximação, nossa
our
participação no
proximity and
consórcio
our
R3
share
do blockchain,
with R3 consortium of blockchain,
composto por mais de 70
comprising of
instituições
more than
financeiras
70 financial
globais
institutions,
que
global
se juntaram
institutions,
para
and they
desenvolver uma
got together
tecnologia que é o
to
Corda
develop
de
the Corda
blockchain
methodology
e
of
compartilhar
blockchain
conhecimento e
and share
experiências
knowledge
nessas
and
áreas.
experience
Ok?
in their areas.
Bom, tenho 2 minutos
I
e
have 2
23
minutes
segundos para
and
vender aqui no
23
mercado.
seconds to sell in the market.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
Eu vou falar dos temas
I'll be
financeiros
talking
e
about
corporativos
financial
da companhia,
and corporate topics.
se os slides me permitirem.
Can I have my slides, please?
Nós nos dedicamos muito, como já foi falado pelos meus colegas,
Like my
ao processo
colleagues
de
said,
integração
we were
pós-fusão.
fully devoted to
Nós
the
estabelecemos como
post-integration
objetivos no início
process.
desse processo,
As
há
the
8
goal,
meses,
8 months ago,
três
we
grandes
set
marcos e
3
metas.
big
Termos uma empresa
goals.
única,
We want to have a single
mantermos o
company,
nosso time motivado ao longo de todo
maintaining
esse
our team
processo
motivated
e
throughout the
assegurarmos que
process,
nossos clientes
and make
continuam
sure our
satisfeitos
clients
e
will still be
recebendo as
happy
entregas que as duas companhias
and
antecessoras
being
haviam se
delivered
comprometido.
by the former
Nós
companies,
nos
just as they were
organizamos
by the
dentro
former companies.
do escritório de integração
In our integration
pós-fusão,
officer,
ao
after
redor
the
de
merger,
26
we
projetos
had
em 4
26
frentes,
projects and 4
com
fronts.
cronograma de duração
Our
esperada de
schedule
18 meses que deve
expected
acabar
for
até
18
o
months,
final
which
do
should
ano
be
de
concluded by
2018.
the end of 2018.
Nós envolvemos de maneira transversal, cobrindo toda a companhia,
Covering
aproximadamente
all the company, we
350
involved
pessoas
approximately
no esforço de
350
integração,
people
com mais
in
de
the
10 mil
integration
horas
effort with more than
trabalhadas.
10,000 hours of work.
Eu gosto de organizar os
I
diferentes
like
projetos
to
ao redor de
show
3
our
eixos
projects
principais.
with 3 main pillars.
O primeiro são
The first
os
pillar
projetos
has to do
usuais
with
em todos
usual
os
projects
M&As.
in all
Eu não vou
M&As.
passar pela lista toda.
I'm not going
Eu
to
acho
go
que
through the whole
vale chamar
list.
atenção aqui
I just
para coisas
highlight
como a incorporação
things
societária
like
do CNPJ da CETIP, que
a
aconteceu num
change
prazo
to
bastante
the corporate
curto,
tax,
a integração da folha de pagamentos, a
the
integração do
integration
nosso
of
sistema de
payroll,
ERP, com
our
todos os
ERP
fornecedores, toda a
system with all
contabilidade
suppliers,
e a
accounting
movimentação na nossa
systems,
estrutura predial
and
de
also
várias
our building
centenas de
structure
pessoas
with
para a gente
hundreds
poder
of people
acomodar a
in order
integração das
to
diferentes áreas
accommodate the
que os meus
integration of
colegas
different
mencionaram.
areas mentioned by my colleagues.
Tem conjunto, esses projetos
Now these
típicos,
projects, these typical
encontrados em qualquer
projects
fusão, eu diria que
applicable
estão
to any
90%
merger,
concluídos.
I believe 90% of them
Tem
have
segundo
already
grupo,
been
que são projetos
concluded. The
específicos
second
relacionados a
group
B3, mais uma
has
vez,
specific
eu não vou ser
projects
repetitivo
related
aqui,
to B3. I don't
listando
want to sound
todos, estamos falando
redundant,
da integração de
but
data
we're
center,
speaking
da
of
integração da
data
plataforma de
center
derivativos com
integration,
CCD,
derivatives with
coisas
CCP
que as
integration.
decisões principais já foram
The main
tomadas, as
decisions
equipes
have
já
already been
foram
made.
integradas, os
Teams
objetivos
have
foram
already been
traçados,
built,
embora a
goals have
implementação
already been
efetiva
set, but the
de
effective
alguns desses projetos,
implementation
de
of
fato,
some of these
toma um pouco mais de
projects
tempo e é por
take a
isso que
little
gente
longer.
imagina que
And
até o
that's
final
why
de
we imagine that by the
2018 a
end of
gente tenha tudo
2018,
isso
we expect to
concluído
see
e a gente não
everything
esteja mais
completed
falando
and we no longer
sobre
have
integração.
to talk about
E
integration.
finalmente, o
Last but
terceiro
not
grupo
least,
são as
the
mudanças
third group
estruturais.
has
O
structural
Gilson
changes.
fez referência
Gilson made
às mais
reference to the
importantes,
most
a
important
implementação
topics,
de uma nova
like the
cultura, de
implementation
uma
of a
nova
new
forma de trabalhar
culture,
internamente,
a new
uma nova
way to
governança
work
interna.
in-house with a
O Juca
new
tratou do novo modelo
governance
de
system.
relacionamento com clientes
Juca talked about a
e da
new
nova experiência dos
model
clientes com a
to
nossa
work
marca
with clients
e o
and
nosso trabalho de
client
marketing
experience with
comercial.
our
Isso
brand
são
and commercial marketing.
movimentos importantes
So
dentro da
these are important
companhia
moves at the
que
company,
envolvem muita
and
gente,
they
muita
involve
reflexão
many people,
e a gente espera
a lot
que
of food for
tenha os
thought,
resultados
and we
desejados,
expect to have
exercitando isso
the
a partir do
goals
ano que vem.
set as of next year.
Nós vamos capturar a partir de 2018 100 milhões
As
de
of
reais de
2018, we
sinergias,
expect to have
no
100
nosso
million
orçamento,
reals in synergies
fazendo isso já no primeiro ano
already in
após
the
a
first
fusão.
year after
Nós
the
temos uma
merger.
expectativa
We
de tomar um pouco mais de
expect
tempo
to take
para
longer
concretizar completamente
to fully carry
a
out
nossa
to
sinergia,
fully carry out
mas
our
a gente
synergy.
tomou, como o Gilson falou,
However,
algumas
like
decisões
Gilson said, we
importantes
made
já
some
durante
important
esse ano,
decisions
e com
this
isso a
year,
gente
and
consegue
therefore we
adiantar
managed to
o
anticipate
processo de captura de sinergias
the synergy
e
capture
traduzir
process
isso em
and
maior
convert
valor
it into
para os
higher
nossos
value to
acionistas.
our
Nós
shareholders.
também elevamos a nossa meta
We
dos
also
100 milhões de
increased
reais
our goal
originalmente
of the original
propostos para
100 million
110
reals to
milhões,
110
sendo que a
million,
última
and the
parcela
last parcel,
desses 110
a
milhões
portion of the
vai
110
acontecer
million,
quando o
will
projeto
take
que
place
o Narboni
once the
descreveu da
project
integração dos
described by
data
Labami,
centers
or data
se
center
concretizar no
integration,
ano de
is
2021.
completed by 2021.
Acho que é natural esperar
It's only
que boa
natural
parte
to
dessas
expect
sinergias
that the
tenham
bulk
vindo
of the
da conta de
synergies
pessoal.
come from
O número é 80%,
personnel.
deveria estar ali no
Personal.
nome da categoria e valor.
80%, this is the name of
Mas
the category,
basicamente essa faixa azul aí são 80%
but in blue we
do
have
material que vocês têm
80%.
impresso.
I
Isso
guess in
está,
the printed
corretamente
copies,
colocado.
you have the right
Um,
specification.
Com a área de TI representando
With IT,
aproximadamente 6%
approximately
e
6%,
as áreas
and
corporativas
corporate areas,
14% do conjunto de sinergias
14% of
que
the
a
whole
gente
group
captura
of synergies
nessa
to
combinação.
be captured in this combination or integration.
Para o ano 2018,
As to year
nós
2018,
divulgamos essa manhã
we
o
announced
nosso
this
orçamento
morning
de
our
despesas
budget
operacionais
of operating,
ajustadas,
adjusted operating
indicando a
expenses,
manutenção
showing
exatamente do mesmo
maintenance
intervalo
of the same interval
proposto para esse ano
proposed
entre
for
1
this
bilhão e
year
50
between
milhões e 1 bilhão e 100
1
milhões de reais.
million and 1
Nós
million
indicamos
100.
nesse slide
So on this slide,
o esforço que está sendo
we
feito
show
dentro
the
da
efforts
companhia
made by the company
para a obtenção
in
dessas
order
sinergias
to get
e
this synergy,
também alguns outros itens que
and
impactam
also
as
some
nossas
additional
despesas.
impacts.
É importante, primeiro,
On our
fazer
revenues.
ajuste
First of all, it's
nas
important to make
despesas ajustadas em
adjustments to
2017,
adjusted
porque nesse ano
expenses in
a gente já está
2017, because in the
capturando
current
pedaços
year we
sinergias.
already
Então, a
have
maneira
synergies
correta de
taking
se
place. So
olhar
the
isso é
right
dizer o
way to
seguinte:
interpret
quanto
is
seria a
to
despesa
say
ajustada
how
em
much would
2017
adjusted
caso não
expense be in
houvesse tido a
2017
combinação
If we exclude the integration, it would be about 1.2. This would be expenses of both companies combined, net of any synergy in 2017. From that onwards, we should assess the impact, macroeconomic impacts and operational impacts on the company. Inflation appears in personal line. It goes beyond inflation at the company as a whole because collective bargaining agreement include real gains. We also have medical inflation. A big part of our expenses are with personnel when we provide healthcare and medical inflation. For those of you who follow it, it is over 20% per year for many years now. And estimates point to the fact that this is a trend. We also have inflation in contracts, service providers, and we also have the conclusion of big projects, converted into two impacts. First being that some of the hours capitalized for our staff come back to our expense line. The company made efforts naturally to address this return of our expense capitalized, but a share of it include people who come back to our operating activity because we have more complex platforms and we have expanded the scope of what we deliver to the market, like Cicero mentioned before and very clearly in his slides. We also have maintenance of new platforms, and as soon as the systems that we build go live after the investment phase, then we will be honoring licensing and maintenance agreements to make sure we have top quality maintenance. So the new clearinghouse, the new Puma data center, our data project known as DVA, they all bring IT or additional IT maintenance costs. And finally, the growth of our infrastructure complex. Whenever we increase our processing capacity to handle the volumes previously described, we have more expenses. And also we expect to increase our revenue line. So at the end of the day, we foresee growth and we hope synergies from the integration. We point to nominal growth, 0 for next year in the interval of adjusted expenses. Now I'd like to take this opportunity very briefly to touch upon a couple of expenses which have affected our recent results. And they vary. Although most of our expenses are fixed expenses, we have a set of variable expenses. And these expenses basically are pegged to our revenues, particularly for CETIP financing, accounting for 49 billion in the first 9 months of 2017. And in other expenses and personal expenses, we have items that vary according to our stock price. This was already described in the past, but we wanted to provide total visibility, giving you the chance to enhance projections, financial projections over the coming quarters. Our plan of long-term incentive is based on stock granting. Whenever we have a concession, or whenever we have the transfer of these stocks to beneficiaries, then the company incurs or considers as labor charges amounting to 60% of what was transferred. And because transfers are based on the current equity value, it has an impact on our expense. By the same token, we also have some civil liabilities related to our equity price. Here we have a breakdown. 133 million is our provision inventory on September 2017, and it may vary based on our stock price. So at every 10% move for that current quarter, we have additionally 13 million as expenses.
deixar de comentar o
And I
assunto
simply have to
do nosso
mention
contencioso
something
tributário, né?
about
Nós
our
temos
tax
autuações relacionadas ao benefício tributário
suits
do ágio da Bovespa
related
Holding.
to
Elas
goodwill
são todas
of Bovespa
classificadas
Holding
como chance de
Company,
perda remota. Seguimos
remote chance of
confiantes de
loss,
que
and we are
seguimos
confident
toda a legislação em
that we are
vigor
compliant
e
with the
que,
effective
no
legislation,
prazo, nós seremos
and in due
vitoriosos
time
na nossa
will be
discussão com a Receita
successful
Federal.
in our conversations
Portanto, a gente
with the
classifica os
IRS.
casos como perda
So we
remota e não há
classify
provisionamento.
these cases
O que eu
as
coloquei
remote
aqui,
loss, and there is no
alguns de vocês
provision.
acompanham isso mais
I think you are
proximamente,
following
mas
this
como é um
more
tema
closely,
sempre
but
de discussão,
because it's always a
a
point of
gente acha que é
discussion,
importante
we
dar
think it's important to
transparência a
provide
respeito disso.
transparency.
Cada dos casos está num estágio
Each one of the
diferente de
cases
andamento
is in different
da
status
nossa estratégia de recurso,
of our
alguns ainda na
appeal
esfera
strategy,
administrativa,
some
e o
in
caso
the
mais antigo, 2008,
administrative
2009,
area,
já
and the
tramitando
oldest
no
case
judiciário.
already in process at the
Tivemos aqui
judiciary
alguns
branch.
resultados
We
negativos
had some
e
negative
tivemos
outcomes
resultado
and
positivo
one
que
positive
foi ligado ao
outcome,
caso
which was
2010-2011
related to a
na Câmara
case
Baixa, o
2010-2011 at the lower house of CARF.
Falando sobre o nosso CAPEX,
What about our
o
CAPEX?
reflexo financeiro
The financial
do que foi
reflex
discutido
of
pelo
what we
Cícero, pelo
discussed
Nardoni e
and
pelos
what
demais
Nardoni,
é uma
Cicero,
redução
and my
do
colleagues
nosso
said
CAPEX
is a
para o
reduction
ano
in our
2018,
CAPEX for year
com um intervalo
2018
entre
with an
220
interval
e
between
250
20 and
milhões de reais
250 million
para
reals
este ano que vai entrar agora.
for the coming
Nós
year.
concluímos a integração
We
das
concluded
clearings,
the integration of the clearing
concluímos
houses
os
and
projetos
also
anteriores,
the
né, no
previous
período
projects
2013,
from 2013 to
Puma e o novo
2016,
data
like
center.
Puma and the new
A
data
gente
center.
continua com projetos
We continue to have
importantes,
important projects,
como, por exemplo,
for
a migração
instance,
da
the
negociação do
migration
site de contingência
of the
e
contingency
investimentos
side
na
trading
estrutura periódica
and
definitiva. Agora que nós
investments
temos uma companhia
in our
maior,
final
com mais
building
gente,
structure.
que a gente
Now we
quer
have more people,
que se
a larger
acomode
company,
de
and
maneira
we want to
próxima, em um
accommodate
lugar
everybody
eficiente para o
close
trabalho e
and
agradável.
providing
E aqui
efficient
só
and
como alguns
pleasant job
exemplos, obviamente a
atmosphere.
lista poderia ser
We have a
maior,
long list,
mas
but
a
just
gente
for the
colocou
sake of
aqui o market
example,
data
here we
como
have
dos
market data
exemplos daquela
as one of the
carteira de
examples
projetos
of the
que vai ter
portfolio of
número maior
projects that will have a
e,
larger number.
Porém, o valor menor
However,
individual para
the
cada um dos
lower
projetos.
individual by
Durante o ano
project
de 2018,
over
a gente pretende
2018,
exercitar o
we
nosso novo
intend
modelo
to
de
exercise
BMO
our
e
new
buscar
BMO
dar
project
fluxo e
and try to give
andamento
more
a
flow
essa carteira
and
nova de
a smooth
projetos.
ongoing process to the new portfolio of projects.
Do ponto de vista do nosso balanço,
As for
nós temos o
our balance
objetivo
sheet,
de reduzir o
our
nosso
goal is to
endividamento
decrease
total.
our total
A companhia
indebtedness.
adotou uma
The
estratégia
company
para
adopted
financiar
a strategy
combinação
to
com a CETIP
finance
de tomar
the
dívida
integration with CETIP
para o
in
pedaço da
terms of
operação.
loans for a
O
share
restante,
of the
como vocês lembram, foi
operation,
financiado
a share
com
of the
os
deal.
recursos
The
que vieram
rest
da venda das
came
ações
from
da
the
CME
proceeds
e
of
também com a
CME
emissão de
equities
ações.
and also
Mas
issue
houve
of
endividamento.
stocks, but there was
Nós
indebtedness.
temos approach bastante
We have a very
conservador do nosso
conservative
balanço,
approach to our balance
entendendo que a
sheet.
companhia
We
deve
understand the
buscar
company
uma dívida bruta
should go for
total
total gross
de uma
debt
vez o
of
seu
1
EBITDA,
times
e temos
EBITDA,
bastante segurança que a
and
gente
we're very
consegue
confident that we'll
atingir esse
manage
objetivo até o
to
final do
achieve the
ano de
goal by the end
2019.
of 2019.
Entretanto,
However,
a gente vai fazer isso
that will be
mantendo o
done
pagamento de
maintaining
proventos.
the
A companhia tem uma forte geração de
our
caixa
payout. We
e
do
a
have
gente
cash,
tem a expectativa,
a cash share,
claro, sujeito
and
às
naturally,
condições do
well,
negócio
subject to the
e
deal's
também sujeito à prioridade
circumstance
que a
and
gente vai dar para a
subject to
amortização de dívida,
priorities
a gente
to
tem uma
the
expectativa de
amortization
poder
of debt. We
entre
expect to
70%
pay
e
out
80%
between
do
70 to
nosso lucro
80%
societário
of
nos
our
anos 2018
equity
e
over
2019.
years 2018
Nós
and
fizemos uma
19.
declaração adicional
We
de
had an
proventos
additional declaration of
sexta-feira
proceeds
passada,
last
após a
Friday
nossa reunião de
after
conselho,
our board meeting.
que também
Showing
devem nos
that
colocar dentro desse
We
intervalo
expect
para
to
o
be
ano de
in this interval
2017.
for year 2017.
A partir do ano 2020,
Starting 2020,
tendo atingido o nosso
once we
objetivo
reach
de
our goal
desalavancagem até
to
lá, a nossa
deleverage,
expectativa
our
é
expectation
poder elevar
is to
ainda mais
increase
essa
even
distribuição
further
de proventos.
this payout.
Com isso, eu encerro a nossa
Well, these are my thoughts. This concludes our presentation, and before we open for the Q&A session, I kindly ask you to use the microphone, introduce yourself. This is being broadcast over the web, and it's important that those who are listening to us know who you are. And I'd like to thank those who helped us to put this meeting together. I don't want to run the risk of being unfair. Eric Caroline, Carla Biasotto, Mariana do Carmo, Fernanda Castro, Felipe Scalco from our marketing and communication and IR teams, inspired by Rogério Santana. He doesn't need to be introduced. Thank you all. And before we give the floor back to you, I would just like to thank you all for all the coverage and for fostering our dialogue throughout the year, particularly for the last 2 years, who were really intense when it comes to communication, interaction with our shareholders. So please keep on doing this great job with IR. We are really honored for having you with us today. Thank you. Almost always. Good morning, Eduardo Rosman, BTG Pactual. I have a question about SIP. What are your thoughts about SIP move? Are they becoming a registration? Well, at first they are trying to register different products that you don't register yet, but probably being prepared to register any type of product. How do you see this move? Do you think SIP might be a competitor or not? Thank you, Rosman. We have a long-term relation with SIP. We have this partnership since the year 2000, year 2001, for TED processing and settlement of docs. We have a contract in force up to 2020. As far as we understand, when it comes to SIP, well, we see SIP as a client. You're right. They might compete with some products. I think they have a strong agenda. Currently with credit cards, settlement and payment, which is their DNA. So I don't think there'll be a lot of confrontation. We always try to have a constructive approach. I don't think it is a source of concern, in terms of a collision. The agenda, where we have a big backlog in terms of services, projects by SIP. And we do play a role. Even now in the new settlement model for credit cards, we built a model for them, SLC, which was something in addition to what we already did. So we always try to tap into new opportunities, and the backlog is always huge. So there are many things for them to do, and perhaps we can help them out under the circumstances. Once again, I don't think, or the fact that they become a registration party, it might even be positive, because sometimes we have the seal of being the only players with this approval for market infrastructure. So in this regard, considering the serious attitude and the proximity we have, trying to see the good side, it is a serious company. The banks own it, and I keep on looking at them as potential partners. I think we even have to foster our relations better. I met Joaquin yesterday at Feberban's luncheon. We always try to have this historical agenda between ourselves, and naturally always goes through Feberban, which, so to speak, is SIP's owner. So the post-integration brings the mission of building the agenda again in order to have a closer relationship. Good morning. Thank you, Gustavo Schroden from Bank of America. Gilson, you took office 8 months ago. Going forward, perhaps excluding internal challenges in terms of culture implementation, what about the business environment? Going forward, what do you assume to be a challenge to be tackled by the company? What makes you, or prevents you from sleeping at night, or hindrances to meet your goal in terms of trying to be the best company in Brazil? What is your challenge down the road considering the business environment? Well, maybe the worst challenge right now, Gustavo, is being on the same page with our clients. We always refer to clients, well, they gave us their vote of trust in the approval, so to speak, or comments during the approval process. And we take this very seriously. I guess our biggest challenge is not to let them down in terms of proximity, transparency, alignment of products to be delivered to the market. So if you think about the business side, we said that we closed a big infrastructure cycle, and now we're getting into a new cycle to develop new things like new services, new products, revisiting products, existing products. And we have to be creative and fast, time to market. And perhaps this is the most severe risk today. I mean, failing or letting them down in the sense that the company integrated, captured synergies, but put us behind. And once the market gets more sophisticated, the bar will be raised and everybody will be eager for new things and new products so clients can make more money and build the Brazilian market. So I see this definitely as our challenge. The ability to be internally organized in order not to leave anything out in terms of covering our clients' needs and working on our development agenda. And it's a huge challenge. When you have a clear agenda of infrastructure, which is the case, and we share this with the market, it was crystal clear, but now we have a different moment and different expectations by the market. Maybe out of luck, well, unfortunately, Brazil's agenda was not so innovative in recent years, and high interest rates did not foster the capital markets. But maybe we have a new phase now with low interest rates, new loan products, loan tradings, more options, digital options, BTB. It was in Juca and Cicero's presentation. So I believe this is the biggest challenge, and it's crystal clear to the company that we already started 2018. We already had our 2018 kickoff with this mindset, and this is the strongest risk as I see it.
Good morning, I'm Rafael Frage with Bradesco. My question goes to Juca regarding that slide that you showed of several projects. Perhaps you could speak more about these projects, and perhaps what do you see as most relevant in terms of revenues for the company in the next 2 to 3 years? If you could perhaps speak about the registration of receivables, how advanced are you in that area? Well, from the standpoint of revenues, we're including there all of our projects, and we believe that they're all very relevant. Our expectation is, well, there's nothing very obvious or simple to say, oh, this is the biggest opportunity that we haven't tapped into yet. And imagine that we are doing easier work before, which is not the case. We understand that the more products we have on our shelf, the highest is the likelihood that we will come up with the big product that will add more revenues for the company. So we believe that we are planting a lot of seeds so that some of them will reap some fruits. So I don't think that any project is more important than the other. I think that they are all very relevant, each in their own proportion. It's hard to say which one would be more important. For some, we observe a potential revenue stream. For IT, market data, I think it's an area where we have to advance a lot. I think I forgot to mention, but Synacor, it's in the listed products segment, but it is also a very well-known and utilized platform by almost all intermediaries. And we think that this is a very relevant software product, and we have to address it as a company product and add more value with this product to intermediaries. I think this is a great opportunity for the company, not to mention all of those projects in the listed segment and OTC. Again, the more seeds we plant and the closer we are to the market and to what the market is demanding, the higher is our likelihood of success. A good deal of what we're building is part of working close to the market and to clients. You asked specifically about the registration of receivables of credit rights. Yes, we are considering registration receivables, and it's a deliverable for 2018, as we expected. Now, what else we can do there? Well, we're still looking into it. I cannot give you more right now. We are looking, yes, at the registration piece of the puzzle because it's something that we already do in this segment, and we believe it is an obvious opportunity. Now, in addition to that, what else we can do? That's what we are still looking into. I can't tell you more right now, but we will disclose this to the market as soon as we have more clarity. Good morning. I am Bruno Rocha with Itaú BBA. Could you please elaborate on the arbitration process of ETS? Could you speak more about deadlines and where we can follow the unfolding of this and potential impacts on pricing? Thank you for the question, Bruno. The arbitration process is at its initial phase. We are still at the phase when they're appointing the judges, and this will be conducted confidentially according to our arbitration rules. Not only it is only getting started, but unfortunately, well, we try to be as transparent as possible about everything with you, but regarding this process, we cannot speak a lot about. We'll have to wait for the outcome so that we can communicate to the market the result of this process. There is a discussion about pricing. There is a discussion about scope and type of service provision. Potentially, we had an offer publicly. We received also public comments about that proposal. And this is what we will discuss during the arbitration process. But I cannot give you any more than that because we don't know. And I unfortunately have to tell you that I will be able to say very little about the process as it unfolds, although I do understand that this is a matter of interest to you. In the end, if all unfolds as we have imagined, during the discussion process with the regulators, in particular CVM, we will have a price for depository services, and it is specifically this that we are discussing. We are not talking about stock trading prices. We're not talking about that. We are talking about transfer prices of stock depositories. We want to have a price at the depository that will allow another infrastructure to possibly connect to our depository. And again, I'd like to remind you that there might be a set up price, but this price has a value, and this is the value paid ultimately by investors when they do business. They pay a trading, post-trading, and depository fee, depending whether you're doing a day trading or not. This is the object of the arbitration. Hopefully, it will take about a year. It is not a fast process, and there is very little precedent in arbitration in Brazil, in this kind of arbitration in Brazil. But we, I believe, have a very skilled team with good advisors to advise us along the way. And again, this is what we had. We will follow what we had agreed with the regulators. I am Francisco Copps with GUARD. If you'll allow me, I have two questions. Looking at the mid to long term and trying to understand what would be an operating margin that you would consider adequate for the business. Well, I remember that at the time of CETIP used to say that they would like to share any margin gain with the market. The same goes for Bovespa, BMF, Bovespa. So how do you see this at B3? Because this company generates a lot of cash and has a big operating leverage gain. So that's my first question. My second question has to do with the stock rent market. When we look at the third quarter, all business lines grew and quite well, and the rent line was the only one that contracted year on year. So I would like to understand how you assess that and what can you do about that market? I'll start with the first question, and then Gilson will speak about the other one. This morning, we divulged all of the guidance to the market. It doesn't include EBITDA margin guidance. So we don't have a guidance to the market about this business. Having said that, I think it is important to mention that our business has important characteristics in terms of operating leverage. Our expense structure is there, and we have been able to do more and more, to have more, higher and higher business volume running on our platform of systems, teams, etc., with marginal increases. But the potential operating leverage exists, and it is obviously an important source to create value in the future, provided, and of course, that we want to share some of these gains if our margin increases more than what we understand would be adequate for us to keep everything. Juca mentioned this a little bit. In the few slides that we chose to include here, one of them was that our fee strategy will continue to include models to incentivize new market niches, incentive models for those that trade more, incentive models to potentially attract investors that are still not investing in our company. So we should use our fee structure just like the two prior companies used to do, as an instrument, not to mitigate margin growth, but to use resources coming from operational leverage to encourage more business for our company. You asked about a contraction in the B2B line. It wasn't such a significant drop, nothing that would stand out as a systemic issue. It was a normal fluctuation. And what we look in the BTB slide, what we saw in the BTB slide, in adding to Rafael's question, we have to tell you that this is another opportunity for us. There's nothing very obvious that we are not doing that we should be doing to double the revenue from that product. No, there are a number of BTB related issues and we are working on all of them. For example, regulatory questions, both local and internationally. Our format of having a CCP, a central counterparty for loans, is a unique characteristic that we have in Brazil. In most markets that use this, they have typically an OTC and bilateral market. So we continue to look at this market carefully and again, considering all possibilities. And again, I stress, talking to the market and figuring out what is the best way to add value and to deliver a possible innovative product. We are innovative, and since we are the central counterparty in this market, we have to see what else we can add to this business. This is another front of opportunities. This is a speech that we are putting into practice, and we continue to believe in it. So there's nothing very obvious or clear to justify this drop, something that we should have done that we haven't done. On the contrary, end-to-end, we added functionalities to IPN, to relevant assets such as market data and integration with equities and settlement at maturity for the equities part. And just to add, Francisco mentioned and Juca said that there was nothing standing out, but we also realized that this was not a generalized impact. There was one specific client that came out of their position, and I think this was a relevant point in the third quarter. It wasn't anything generalized, systemic, or structural that reduced interest in the product. No, I think that there was one client that used to donate a lot and stopped, and that impacted the third quarter. But that continues in our agenda as one of our top priorities. Gustavo Louro with JP Morgan. I have two questions. First has to do with the capturing of synergies with the merger. The capturing of synergies, I think, happened faster than you expected. You reviewed your estimates from 2020 to 2018. So what happened faster than expected? And my second question is related to OPEX and CAPEX. What is your foreign exchange exposure? Because we are entering a year of elections. There should be a lot of volatility. And I would like to know how you intend to address this if the foreign exchange increases or reduces the real dollar price. Well, the process to capture synergies, we had a preliminary study before we combined the companies based on public information. And we had discussed our prior experiences in terms of speed, decision-making speed, particularly how we would put together our final teams after the integration of the companies. And I think that our team worked way hard, which I think is good in terms of the atmosphere of the company. Jolson is nodding because he was one of the biggest sponsors of our effort. And we counted on a lot of collaboration of our colleagues. We reflected, made our decisions so that we could get to the end of the year with final teams already in place. And we did something very nice. This year, we held an important event about 15 days ago when we gathered about 180 leaders of the company, and we had the kickoff for 2018 already with the people whom we understand will be the ones that will be responsible for managing the company looking forward. So these were the main things. And also, we rushed to close some offices. We had an office on Tabapuã Street. Many of you knew it. We closed 2 floors on Faria Lima. We brought some people from Alphaville. And actually we closed an office in Alphaville. Yeah, we did that. And so all of that unfolded very smoothly and fast, and we have to compliment all the 180 people who made this happen in less time than we had expected, without putting in jeopardy those things that we mentioned. That spirit of unity among the teams, client satisfaction, and delivery of the critical projects that Cicero mentioned, and having capital market rekindling and the new Novo Mercado. So all of that happened. So we accelerated our synergies and things unfolded. In terms of FX exposure in the OPEX, it's a very little amount. 5% of our OPEX has an FX exposure. It's not material. And we always try, well, in the beginning of the year, we position ourselves and we hedge our expenses, or the expenses expected along the year, so that this will have less weight in our budget and will not hinder, for example, budget of a department that has a trip scheduled for October. And if something happens in the foreign exchange, this trip has to happen. In CapEx, our exposure is not that big. I would say about 20% of our CapEx has an FX exposure. Lucas Lopes with Credit Suisse. I'd like to know about the financing segment. Denatran wants to participate in the liens of financed vehicles, and then the Detran of Minas Gerais is not giving you an authorization to operate in the contracts system after they changed to the accreditation system. And now I guess that you are getting a message, an error message from the Detran of São Paulo. I want to understand more regarding the nature of the technical difficulties that you are facing in São Paulo. Does this concern you? Should we be concerned about it? And this coincidence of negative news is just a coincidence, or are you worried that new entrants and new competitors might be acting more strongly to participate more substantially in the back office of auto loans? Perhaps with the Detrans, the traffic departments aiming to reduce the role of B3 in this market. I will begin and then Marcos will happen. I think that Marcos explained our role well. I think that Renagrave, the system, did not catch us by surprise because we were already in contact with Denatran and we understand what they are trying to do, what they're trying to address. I think Marcos gave you a long explanation to actually explain that we do not do registration. It is not by coincidence what's happening at the state traffic departments, state Detrans. Many of them are changing their model because of Renagrave that will only be in place in September of 2018. But some have interpreted that that they should start adapting to it. The way we see this, we are now part of the working group that was put together by Denatran, explaining, perhaps due to lack of knowledge of the regulator regarding the amount of businesses and services that we provide to the whole financial industry, we are trying to reorganize roles. I don't think that there's an agenda of competition. I think that they want to decentralize registration. It is very clear. They talk about what's the name of the category of companies? RCs, I think. ERCs, actually. So there's this new position of the ERC, which is not different than in some of the states where we operate. And it seems that this is the path to be adopted from now on. There are some things that drew our attention, and they prohibit us from transferring data. There are some state ordinances that actually do not make any sense, and we're going to challenge that and discuss that within the working group. that is kind of reserved and confidential at the request of the trend. There's a lot of discussion happening in this working group, and we cannot talk about it. But we always have as partners in this discussion the banks and associations of the industry, and they're all included in this discussion. So I don't think that there's like a specific agenda to create hurdles and competition against us. We don't have a problem with having competition. We understand that even if there are many companies doing, the trend is that one company will be a lot more efficient. I don't like to call this a natural monopoly, but you end up having more reliable information with the best price if you have one company than if you have 5 companies doing the same thing. But we don't have a problem with competition. What we do want is to make sure that we will continue to be able to standardize the service delivered to these new state ERCs, or registering companies. Perhaps Marcos can add to that, but to us, the take-home message is, it is important that we do not have a setback in terms of SNG, the Brazilian Liens database. Because here we are talking about a portfolio greater than 200 billion reais. Any percent of delinquency, we're talking about billions of reais. This is a consolidated 20-year product that works very well. So everything that we can do in the working group with the support of banks and institutions is to make sure the system will work so that we can, operationally speaking, make our clients' life easier. The theme of the registration companies do not have anything directly to do with us. I think that we have to advocate for consumers. We have to understand what the final cost will be to the person taking the auto loan, because that might entail a cost increase. We are seeing this in some states. It doesn't increase our costs directly, but perhaps this is a concern of the banks and of consumer defense. I don't know if I forgot anything, Marcos. Just to add to what you said, you talked about negative news. I think that these negative pieces of news result from a misinterpretation of the resolution. Because the DETRANs, we've been in touch with the DETRANs, and this resolution says that if you're going to be an ECD, you cannot be a registering company. Since we are not a registration company, transferring data to the registration company, as we do in many states, is not prohibited. And when you speak about São Paulo, as far as we know, in São Paulo, the registration of the contract is happening. The return that we are getting, well, we first have a message saying that there is inconsistency in the system, but then we have a notice regarding the issuance of the document, but the issuance of the document only happens when registration is completed. So we are in contact with DETRAN in São Paulo. They included Prodesp in this discussion because the ones that do that, we transfer the information to DETRAN, and Prodesp is the one that registers. And we expect to be able to clarify this to all parties involved. But these news are just the result of misinterpretation of what the law sets forth. And just to add, yes, we are concerned that can impact our revenues. There's no doubt about that. The regulator has always been very creative, unfortunately. They tend to be very creative. This is historic. It has always been so. And we are devoting ourselves to this. And we're very focused. We remain totally interested in providing these services and others. So you might be wondering, the company with this new agenda will not consider this a priority. So it's important that I stress this. We are very dedicated to this. Sometimes it is hard to include this or to coordinate the agendas of the banks associations, front office of banks, back office of banks, FEBRABAN, the Federation of Banks. So I mean, it's a little bit of our role to coordinate all that, because at the end of the day, everyone is operating and is doing their business, and we don't want to be considered guilty for not doing that work. So I just want to stress, we're totally devoted to this agenda. It is not the first time that we have this type of quote-unquote innovation. Actually, talking about innovation, I have to mention a first system, and Denatran is saying that the system is being developed in blockchain according to Denatran. We are trying to understand what they have done so far. Apparently not a lot, but we are fully dedicated to this agenda. I want to make this very clear. And we understand that there is a possible design that will be very efficient, in which we will remain as an ECD. In other words, we will continue to operate a pre-lien segment, and we will continue to be a hub that submits and transfers information to all the trends of Brazil. Marcus showed a chart, a colorful map of Brazil. Every color is a different model. So there is creativity and lack of standardization in the trends. So perhaps the bank doesn't even know, but we, B3, are dealing with each one of the stated trends so that they will register the contract, send it to the registration companies, and so that they can pay in banks or in lottery houses. So it's a big logistics. Sometimes when you discuss with the bank people, they don't even know. Perhaps the back office person knows how to do this in Maranhão, and that they pay the registration in cash, and that we pay in a lottery house in Goiás. That kind of thing. If you don't have standardization, the house will crumble. So we're sure that this is going to be very labor intensive. We'll continue to devote to this, but most likely we are going to have a positive outcome. This is what we expect. We cannot guarantee it, but this is our agenda. Carlos Macedo with Goldman Sachs. Comparing B3 in Brazil and with other markets globally, we always see a gap of fixed income not having a volume trading. The hurdle has been high interest rates. You have to carry it. The government does a crowding out with a lot of issuance. Now with low interest rates, what are the hurdles that you envision or that still exist for fixed income? And what can you do to help the market overcome the challenge and the hurdle? Because this can be a very big market for Brazil. This is a fantastic question, because it's kind of a frustration, really, that we share with you. Cicero and Luca can help me, Cicero and Juca, because we understand that fixed income is a natural path. Like you said, with the new role of the capital market, i.e. providing financing for projects that companies in the country want to develop. So we can have a quick cycle of issuances, and it's always in our mind to have an efficient process so that according to the CVM rule and regulation, we work very closely with ANBIMA and CVM. We want to have a quick path to facilitate issues, but this is in the pipeline. And we have an investment, as Cicero mentioned, in the trading system, because it's almost in its totality of government bonds, but we want to have a secondary market, a secondary electronic market of corporate bonds. But what we lack, well, is the market embracing this agenda. In other words, investors effectively starting to allocate part of their assets to credit or loans, and they start and have to have them trading this in the secondary market. This will come from both institutional investors and individual investors. There are a number of institutional investors which for years have been buying government bonds with returns superior to their actuarial goals. and they're buying corporate bonds, and they don't do management of duration or trading in the secondary market. I think that low interest rates will be a catalyst for this kind of movement. It will bring individuals to this game. We see the role of these new platforms of distribution that are effectively driving this agenda to sophisticate investment products, either with stock, structured notes, recently incentivized debentures. We see a volume of trading of incentivized debentures in the secondary market. I think 12 or 16 times greater than the trading of the other classes. It's small, but it's still something, all coming from individuals in small volumes.
So, at least in our agenda, that's what we have. In other words, having an agenda to bring in-house the CETIP trader. We are buying this technology from ICE. We're still negotiating in order to have this in-house by 2018. We also have a trading system fostered in the market, expedite the process, and make everything we can to expedite the agenda. And maybe later on we can be more creative. Maybe we can have a CDS negotiation contract and we can evolve faster. Just adding to Gilson, we also want to help the market with pricing or fixed income assets in 2018. We already have a service which is the calculator, but the calculator has the asset flow, the proceeds, cash flow, but it's important to have an API for 100 securities because we don't have maybe the main input, which is loan spread. So we're working on a team within our pricing area, which is part of the risk area, and we're going to build analytical model. Over time, we're going to disclose the methodology. It will be replicated, and we want to offer it as a service to the market. There are many issuance that have no price reference. We don't know where in the curve it is, and it can impair the secondary market. So in addition to being a service of market data as a whole, to provide, sell more information, we also want to have a side effect, which is to help the liquidity of the market. Just one last comment. Based on everything we said, it all boils down to transparency of information. The e-trading, information to the market, we understand this is important. However, I would also like to highlight something more, well, in my opinion, I think it brings friction to the market, which is the tax area. I think we have to draw attention to this agenda. We have to work on a tax agenda with the market. In reality, well, Gilson said, if you think about incentives and individuals, they negotiate among themselves because the yield is different compared to a fund or a bank or a foreign investor. So taxation brings, well, sometimes it impairs communication. When a foreigner buys government bonds, sometimes it is, well, there is a tax benefit, but not at all times, because sometimes there is no communication between different markets. So we want to remove friction so markets can communicate better. Individuals negotiating and trading with a bank or foreigners, so the more players you have in the market, and I guess taxation is a friction, but we have to foster liquidity. So it is our agenda. We are investing everything we can, but we also need a structural agenda. 2018, well, that's still a challenge. It is an election year. We have to think about tax, but I have to mention this. That's a structural note, and that's an agenda that we definitely want to move forward. A question from Eduardo Nishudo from the web, Brazil Plural. What's the company's opinion on blockchain? How to get closer to it? And do you see it as a challenge or opportunity, particularly for depositary and securities registration? We've already been working for a while, maybe a year or more than a year, in the lab, trying to know this technology better. Like I said in my slide, the company partnered with R3 Consortium so we can better understand the technology and be closer to moves by big players in our market. And trying to better understand the possible applications of the technology and also the impact or opportunities or threats to our business, to the company as a whole. We've seen few applications, practical applications. If we think about abroad, the technology brings a lot of challenges. Think about the blockchain technology that supports Bitcoin. If we think about an application to our business, think about latency, capacity, throughput of deals and trades. That's a challenge. So many technologies that are coming up still have a lot of challenges to be tackled. There are many case studies surrounding blockchain. These case studies could be developed, but the big challenge is the concept rather than technology per se. These case studies could be solved with existing technologies that are better understood, they are more mature, and could solve the problem the same way. Anyway, like I said, we are pretty close to this technology as a protagonist in the development of this technology in Brazil when it comes to the regulatory agents and other financial institutions, so we can better understand how to apply and if it makes sense to put it into practice. I don't know if I answered your question. Another question by Eduardo Nishida, Brazil Plural. What about the outlook of the real estate platform? And what about the result of Caixa bid? What about the impacts on the strategy? Well, the strategy behind the real estate platform, and now with the upturn of the market, we already have an expansion plan, like I said in the beginning of my presentation. And in this plan, we are pursuing our connection not only with the entities that make up registration and notaries, but also with the notary publics per se. We are speeding up the process so we can expand the registration process. Another product that we already have, which is pretty much consolidated, is the appraisal or assessment of the real estate property. We are connected with all financial institutions, the companies that provide appraisal services to such institutions, and also with our calculation engine, which provides the final appraisal and discloses to banks and monitors all the differences. Answering the last part of your question of Resolution 4088, I don't believe this is going to have an impact on our strategy. All the other products we have are not directly related to 4088. This is monitoring to submit information to the central bank. I highlight what Marcus said. It doesn't change our priorities at all. We've always talked about the universe of the real estate platform with 4 pillars: appraisal, registration, in the future registration of CCI for future securitization, and 4088. From the financial aspect, appraisal and registration had the bulk of the pool of revenues, and the other 2 projects were adjacent products to drive the move. So maybe we priced it wrong in the bidding process, or maybe above what we should, but it doesn't put the business at risk. And later on, over time, we'll try to pursue this process more deeply. We don't address that much in the vehicle segment, but we do it and it's not even charged. In the auto loan segment, it is a byproduct of SNG, delivery of information, so it's an added value product, provided we can do it. Other organizations might have more challenges. So you're patiently listening to us for 2.5 hours, so maybe we have time for one last question. Any further questions? Is lunch included? Just a joke. No further questions? Okay, just highlight what Danielle said. Thank you very much for your interest. Your long-standing partner over the year, your coverage is excellent. Sometimes you even go to traffic agents anticipating ourselves. So I tend to say that this is a strong partnership and it's an honor having you around and counting on your efforts. So I wish you all a great 2018. Please count on us. We have many challenges ahead, and as usual, you will be key partners so we can be up and running in 2018. Thank you very much.